20 minutes of Final Fantasy 16.
The dream is dead, and so is Alice. Well, hello and welcome to Triangle Squared, a PlayStation podcast. I am your host, Brett Beck, and alongside me, as always, is Mr. Chris Figs. Chris, how you doing, buddy?
Good, man. How are you?
Tired, if we're being honest. And all that pre-show ramble that me and you did. I never let you know how tired I am, but that's okay. That's life.
It happens. You were too tired to remember.
Too tired to remember to tell you, but that's okay. I hope life has been treating you well. I know that work can be so fun, but
Work's work.
I guess we got to do it, right?
That's what the dirty capitalists in Washington would like you to think.
Guys, if you're new to the podcast, first and foremost, welcome. Like I said, this is Triangle Squared, a PlayStation podcast. If you are new, we hope that you stick around and enjoy what you hear. If you do, consider liking, subscribing, all those things. In a day where we're going to end up talking about, let's just cut it. The news is still relatively slow. We're in that time of the year. Seems like the floodgate is about to open and a lot of big name games are about to be coming. We're not too far away from June, so I'm assuming we're going to start hearing a whole bunch of stuff in May. But for now, we're still in the April showers where it's just little dribbles. So we're going to talk about you guys and what y'all think about Konami's return to AAA gaming based off last week's episode. We're going to talk about Media Molecule announcing in support for Dreams, EA doing some shady business, being EA when it comes to the Alice franchise. And Chris has decided that we're going to talk about Joseph Staten leaving Microsoft, but he promises me that he has a good reason as to why we're talking about that on a PlayStation podcast. So I'm going to put my trust as a little bird in the palm of Chris's hand.
Oh, God, that's a lot of pressure.
And when we get there, I'm going to let Chris spearhead that conversation. But with that said, we're going to start to show off the way that we always do. And that is a time-honored tradition of checking in on what each of us have been playing so that we can let you know if there's something new that you should be playing, that we've enjoyed, something old that you should be playing that we are enjoying, or anything in between. Chris.
Brett.
As always, I will defer to you to start this off. Tell me, what have you been playing this week?
So I've been deep into 2 games this week, which are Resident Evil 4 Remake. And if you can guess the next one, I'll give you nothing because it's obvious. MLB 23 The Show, yes.
Yeah. You've been deep in the annals of both?
I have been much deeper into the annals of one of them, but I did just finish my first run of Resident Evil 4. I adore that game. It is a classic. And the remake is just as good, arguably better. But it's just really good. I hope you can play it eventually. I'd like to do like a spoiler chats or something on it. So I need you to get to it, Brett.
Oh, sorry. Let me clear my schedule and put that down. Because my list is not going to be anything. You're gaming in the now, sir. You don't even know. I'm gaming in the fucking past. So I guess since your list is a little more, look, we know your MLB 23 shots. Is there anything more you want to talk about specifically with Resident Evil 4 Remake? Since this is the first time you've really gotten, you talked about playing it a little bit last week, but it seemed like you were still quite early on. So it seems this week you've really put a focus on going ahead and running through. And I'm assuming that it was probably a focus of playing it that became a mild obsession. Is that right?
Yeah, for the most part, it got to a point where I'm like, I was taking it slow, like doing a chapter a night. And then around chapter 5, I just binged it and then ended last night having played it almost the entire day at level 15. And then I beat the game right before the show started. I don't have a ton more to say. It's a really good game. Probably my favorite of the 3 remakes, although 2 is again a classic. I think they did a lot of stuff. There's some stuff I don't like as much, but then there's some stuff that they do significantly better. So I think if anyone was curious if they should play Resident Evil 4, the answer would be a hearty yes.
So in comparison and comparing it to 2, right, and 3 remake as well, how much do you feel? I get the impression from hearing people talk about it and talking with Saul and some of my other friends about it that this might be the okay. let me step back because I didn't play 3. I didn't play the remake of 3 yet, so I can't speak too much to it. But between 2 and 4, I feel like they've taken way more liberties with the source material with 4 than they did with 2. But that might just be the way that it's being talked about around me. Because there is an air of mystery and vagueness to it, because it's like Saul and my other friend Seth are playing it, and my other friend Seth just started as well, and they were kind of talking about some of the things that was new and arguing over whether it was new or whether it was in the original game. And the more they talked and kind of tried being vague around certain things, I was like, did they change a bunch of stuff? So I've heard enough people talking to where it sounds like they've changed a bunch, but maybe it's just more people are focusing on the changes here than they did when the hubbub was going around with 2's remake.
I mean, they cut a lot of stuff out of 2 also, but I think it's hard because for me, everything that's changed in Resident Evil 4 has changed for the better. You know, except maybe like 1 or 2 things, which we can talk about at a different point. But I think for the most part, like changes to certain allies in the game that let you know like more about them, certain enemies in the game that let you know more about them. There's some stuff like some of the campiness is not there. Like, I don't know if it's a spoiler, but there's one scene with an enemy where in the original game, Leon says like, "I don't care, bro." And in this one, he just says, "I don't care." And, you know, it loses some of the charm of the old one. But I still think it works well. I think it's a more realistic is strong, but it's a more like modern, gritty, serious take on it. Where I think for all of the conversation with Resident Evil 4, that's a goofy ass game in a lot of ways. So, and this one, this one is goofy too. Like there's one scene.
That was the thing about the idea of, and I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead, finish.
You're good. No, like I said, it maintains some of the goofiness, which makes those moments, I think, a lot funnier. Like there's one scene where Leon could easily back away from the wall, but instead he plants his foot on the wall and does a backflip. And I'm like, that was hilarious and completely unnecessary, you know? And
which
those moments
is definitely those moments are in the original as well. But so I get what you mean though. It's like keeping some of it, but because of the more self-serious tone, it makes it even more funny when they suddenly pull something like that out of the pocket.
Right, because you're going through this like really intense battle, and then this crazy thing happens that's gonna kill you, and then he does a backflip off the wall for no fucking reason, and it's hilarious. Like it just is funny. So I don't know. I don't think there's really much negative to say about Resident Evil 4. I'm sure there's some changes that if I went back and played it or anything like that, I would be maybe upset about, but I think, and I'll steal from Skill Up a little bit when I talk about it. He said, you know, I don't remember anything being cut from Resident Evil 4 after playing this game, but anything in this game that you cut from Resident Evil 4 remake, I would be pissed about. And I completely agree with that take. So,
you know, as long as for a series, it's always had a certain level of campiness. There is a level of where it starts to become too ridiculous. And I remember my big turning point for the series. And 5 is a okay game. It's fine. Like it's a really fun co-op game.
5 is great. Not a Resident
It's actually probably the best thing for it. Yeah, it's like it's a perfectly solid game. Not really tense or scary in any sense, but that's okay. But I remember when you get to the end, and I don't want to really spoil 5, but for the sake of just, you can't talk about it without
everyone knows
when Chris is punching the fucking boulders, I'm just like, okay, come on, man. It's like these are 2-3 times as big as this man, and I know he's yoked. He is, but there's no story reason as to why he should be superhuman, incredible strength. There is for Wesker. It makes total sense as to why Wesker's doing what he's doing. But Chris just fucking get out of here. Bam. I'm like, fuck this. This is ridiculous. But yeah, I was thinking about because I was talking to somebody about Max Payne. And my connection here is that what it sounds like is going on with 4's remake is that it's doing a lot like what Max Payne 3 did to Max Payne, where Max Payne 1 and 2 are very meta and they talk about themselves in a weird way. They have weird supernatural discussions and stuff like around Norse mythology. Your guy talks about like feeling like he's in a video game with the stuff that's going on around him. It pokes fun at the genre of noir. Mm-hmm. And I feel like Resident Evil 4 had a lot of that, right? It's real campy and it's real aware of itself, and Leon does and says some ridiculous stuff that just seems to fit the tone. And then you come in with this remake, just like they did with Max Payne 3 being a sequel, and Max Payne 3 is just a straight up story in a super serious, like self-serious role of Max being older. It strips away all of the meta stuff, any of the weird camping or poking fun at itself, and it's just super serious. And I was wondering if that was going to be the case with some of the stuff they were showing for 4, because I'm like, this looks so much more dramatic than 4 did. But how does that work? I was like, is it still going to be campy? Is it going to be overly serious? So I'm curious to actually play it and find that out.
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't want to spoil too much. I just think that it's a very good, and you should just play it. I highly recommend it to anyone who, whether you've played the original or not, I think you'll get a lot out of the game.
Well, that comes to a discussion kind of in general, though. Speaking completely separate as to whether or not Resident Evil 4 is a good game or Max Payne 3 is a good game, which Max Payne 3 is a good game.
It's absolutely
even if it bucks a lot of the stuff that people loved about the original. But the point being there is this has been happening for a bit, for a few different series. And we were kind of talking about it when we were talking about games being a little... I guess more willing to be weird back in the day, like we were talking about Maneater and stuff being a good example of a modern day version of that. It does make you wonder, like, at some point there is a value in not letting every single piece of material that you work on be overly self-serious. And gaming has had a bit of a problem of, I guess it seems to me, right, outside looking in, it seems like people told people forever that games were immature. And so it seems like people who got told that went into the industry and were like, you know what? Games are going to be so mature now. We're going to be fucking so serious and we're going to take it. And I feel like that's what happened. Whether or not it's true, the industry has definitely veered far more towards, at least in the AAA space, towards a self-serious tone, when the AAA space used to be full of some pretty wild stuff in a fun way, like still great games, all-time classics. But you very seldom get that these days. And if you do get that, the problem seems to be that you get critically hit for it a lot of the times. I was on Twitter and someone was talking about film, and I think the same is true to games to some degree, where they were talking about the disconnect between critics. It was about the Mario movie, actually. The disconnect between critics and audiences. And Gideon, which is somebody we've been following on Twitter for a long time, he was saying, and I think this is really where I land, that from what he can tell, critics want stuff to be super serious. Yeah. Audiences want things to not require too much thinking. And the perfect game, therefore, exists right in the median of there.
Okay.
But true, because games are so driven towards being commercially or critically successful, as well as commercially, because of incentives being driven behind Metacritic scores and stuff, I think games tend to, definitely in the AAA space, veer more self-serious because they want to make sure they hit a certain critical standpoint, and they don't want to be critiqued for not being serious enough or being immature or something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think I agree.
It's hard to say. I don't even know if I completely agree with the statement so much as I kind of thought it through, and I was like, yeah, I mean, that checks out to me in pretty much all mediums.
Yeah,
it seems things have skewed towards being incredibly serious, which is cool, and you can tell some great stories. But sometimes it's nice to allow things to be campy and goofy and the Evil Dead, you know?
True. I don't know. I think one of the things is the thing with games right now is kind of the obsession with movies, right? Like every game franchise wants to be a movie, and every game franchise, literally and figuratively, is the better way to say that, right? They all want to be a movie when you're playing them, but they also all want to be a big budget movie, you know? So I think we're building games that are easier to see that way, you know, and we don't get fun stuff like, just pulling this out of my ass, but like Super Time Force Ultra, right? Great game. You're not getting a movie out of it.
Yeah.
Not that you couldn't, but it's not.
And you go towards the answer that's the benefit of AA, which is where Maneater exists, right? And indie. It's like those spheres still get to be ridiculous ideas, like a time traveling barbarian.
Yes,
cool.
Exactly.
That's
Shuhei Yoshida.
Also true. So it's good, but it leads to a thing where it's like, certain games that are revered as classics have that certain layer to them. And in the era of remakes where we are, it's like, oh, if I'm not mistaken, Max Payne being a good example, Remedy, if I'm remembering correctly, isn't it that Remedy is being, hired out by Rockstar to remake Max Payne 1?
Yeah, Rockstar is publishing Max Payne 1 and 2 remakes from Remedy.
All right. And the question becomes, if they're remaking them, is Remedy going to go self-serious on this? I feel like that answer is no, because they still have some playfulness to Alan Wake. And I don't know. Alan Wake is actually... I still think Alan Wake kind of fits into that old Max Payne where it's self-aware and it talks about it. But it's more like Alan Wake hides it behind reading the collectibles.
Yeah.
Instead of it being on its sleeve in the way that Max Payne wore it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't like borderline break the fourth wall, but it still definitely pokes fun at itself and what it's going for.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I think Control has some layers of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an argument that the best way to go about it is to be self-serious, but also do that stuff, you know? Like, because that's the thing. Like, I feel like some games take themselves very seriously. Max Payne being a super self-serious thing, but then every time he goes into bullet time, he makes some quip about it, you know? Like, super serious, super dark story, and then it's like, oh, that was weird. I feel like I'm in a video game. And then it just continues on. Like, that stuff is funny, right? It's the same thing I was saying about Leon, of the like, I gotta go get Ashley. And then he kickflips off a wall. You know, that stuff is funny. It's funnier because of how self-serious it is. You know what I mean? So
yeah, sure. And of course, you got to be careful because you don't. I mean, if we're being honest, you don't want a game like The Last of Us being not self-serious. But that's because of the type of story it's trying to tell. So It's not like I'm saying no games can be self-serious. It's just there's a better balance. There has to be a better balance than where we currently are. But that's the thing.
It would depend on what you were going for, and it's what you said about the story, but. The Last of Us acknowledging that it's a video game would be funny, right? Like that, like that type of game, you know, having points where Joel's like, "Oh, I'm out of inventory space in my backpack because we couldn't develop more," or something like that. Like it would be funny, but then it would be an entirely different type of game. It would not be this self-serious HBO show. It would have been like a one-off because this is great. That's what I was about to say. So is Matt Hazard, you know.
And that's where it gets really great about what you said. And I agree that the problem to a degree is not a problem because The Last of Us is a great game. And from what I understand, it was a great show. So putting those two things together, the difference there is that while The Last of Us would have been still great and told an interesting story, if it chose not to be completely self-serious the whole time, I still would have probably enjoyed it. But that game probably would not have gotten an HBO adaptation.
No, it wouldn't have. And if it did, it would have been
everything
something more
trying to be cross-media. Well, yeah, that's the thing. Is like everything trying to be a cross-media thing these days means that it's hard to do a game like Max Payne because it feels like you have to be wholeheartedly into being goofy, campy, fourth wall breaky, or super serious, and it's going to only work one way or the other. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean,
but I don't know.
I guess
that's outside looking in.
Your point is kind of invalid because Mark Wahlberg played Max Payne. So
Max Payne, yeah, I know.
So clearly they'll try. Me. I don't particularly dislike that movie, but
you know what's funny? I don't hate the movie.
Yeah.
It's not particularly Max Payne in any way. It's what we talked about with Resident Evil 5. Yeah. It's a perfectly all right movie.
Yeah, it's totally
nothing fun. About it. Nothing about it just screams Max Payne to me. I mean, I guess it's a noir-ish film, but they made a lot of deviations that make it very easy to just be like, it's a movie.
Do you think that Max Payne being played by Mark Wahlberg means that Sam Lake thinks he looks like Mark Wahlberg?
God, it'd be more funny if there's an interview with Mark Wahlberg where he's like, I always kind of thought that I looked like Sam Lake.
Yeah. It's like this. It makes me laugh. It's the same concept of how I really want to get a Chris Pratt signed Scott Hatterberg baseball card, like really bad. Same thing.
Okay. Well, let me clear mine out real quick. So,
tell me.
I talked about gaming in the past. I've played one more game that I forgot to put on here.
My!
Because it was a good time.
It was a good time.
Ooh. All right. So you ready here?
Yeah.
We talked about Reverie last week. I finished it up, got the plat like the night that we recorded. After we recorded. I started up because I told you my Vita for whenever I got in that real big stint of playing it in 21 and then early 22, I had a bunch of games installed on it that I just never got around to. So Devious Dungeon, finally started that one. Super fun.
Great game.
I've really got to shout out. I think Rediculous is, of course, or however you say that, is a publisher. So it's not really their games. But people look at them and treat them like, well, it's a Rediculous game. It's got to be trash. Some of their games are not good. All they are is a porting publisher. They port games from other things over to different consoles. Bam. Yeah, they were always known for having games that are mostly easy plats. Devious Dungeon took me about 5 to 6 hours to platinum. Devious Dungeon 2 took me about probably 6 hours to platinum. And platinuming it is beating the entire game. And then some.
Yep.
I think it's a perfect challenge to gameplay thing. And the best thing is the entire time I was playing both of those games, I was just watching Impractical Jokers with my wife and kid. It's great. Both days. I'd come home for lunch, turn it on, knock out a few levels, watch an episode and a half or so of Impractical Jokers, go back to work. Bam. It was great. I really enjoyed it. I liked having something I didn't have to pay attention to. So I got both of those, Devious Dungeon 1 and 2 platinums. Between Devious Dungeon 1 and 2, I decided that, and I've been thinking about replaying the 2008 Prince of Persia reboot. And I went to go look and see if anybody had it locally. They didn't. Then I was like, I want to look online, but it's like $10 plus $8 shipping. And I'm like, you're out of your fucking mind. I'm not paying $8. I'm not paying the same price as the game to ship it here. And then still have to buy the epilogue that I'd never played back in the day because I was a poor boy. So I had unused reward points. I just got a $20 PSN card and a $5 PSN card from my rewards points. Got on the PlayStation 3, and there was a bundle where you can get the epilogue and the game for $21.
Nice.
So
it's not bad.
I've recently had an experience with the PS3 store again. I love that game. So I played about 2 hours of it that first night. Game still holds up incredibly well. Means I got some more time in with my Defender BT controller, which I am happy to say works flawlessly. No issues at all.
Mine's still garbage.
Yeah, connects perfectly. Some of it was, I think, just getting used to the game, where I felt like the game had a slightly loose analog. But as I played more, I was like, I feel like I remember this back in the day too. So I don't think it's the controller. Everything works like it's supposed to. But that game, stylistically, I really wish that they would just remaster it, because all it needs is a higher resolution. That's it. You could honestly, if you gave me this game, like I'm sure that the PS3 emulator, the RC PS3 on computer, can probably play it at 4K, be gorgeous. It looks great in 720p on my little, monitor back here that I play on. And still controls quite well. Did you ever play the 2008 Prince of Persia, or have you been much of a Prince of Persia fan throughout the years?
I've played it. I actually started it relatively recently too. Not enough to talk about. I did like, oh, you fall and I pick you up with magic kind of thing, and then I stopped playing it.
So but you didn't cleanse the first Holy Land or whatever it's called?
No, I didn't cleanse anything.
Gotcha. I love that game. So, and I didn't realize I'm very close to plat. So while it's not as good for the trophy competition as say something else is, it'd be a plat that I'd be super proud of. Yeah. Pretty much the only, I'm missing like 6 trophies, and they're all like that plus the platinum is still worth like 1,000 points, which is not bad. No. I've got to run between like 3 of the areas in a certain time limit, which I remembered I was working on before whatever reason something came out and stopped me 11 years ago, 13 years ago, whatever it was. But it's that, and then I've got to do every combo in the game, which apparently is a kind of a bug trophy, or I don't know. The problem with this one is you have to do every combo in the game, but for it to count off your list, you can't kill the person with the combo. Like the last hit can't be a killing blow, and nothing can break the combo, which makes sense. But that means that you could pull the combo off, kill the person, and then be like, shit. I've got to do it again on someone else. And then I've got to get 5 parries or perfect blocks or whatever in a row on the hunter boss. That's it.
That's not bad.
I've already collected all the 1001 way back in the day of the light seeds. So I'm very close. I'm gonna play through it again, beat it again, have a good time, knock out those last few trophies. So yes, Chris, I will be playing the PS3 more.
Good.
If you really want to get ballsy, let's get that Portal 2 Platinum.
I would love to, but there's no online servers.
They pulled the online servers?
Yeah, I'll check again, but I think it's dead.
No. Valve has so much money. Yeah. Steam makes hand over fist money. There is zero reason to close these servers.
Closed on May 22nd, 2018. The Platinum is now obtainable, or unobtainable.
Damn it.
Rest in peace.
Valve, how could you do this?
You're tearing me apart, Gabriel.
Okay, well, I will get back and I'll let you know on that. Then, because I've been wanting to replay them and they've been on my list since the beginning of this year, I platinumed the first Sly Cooper and beat it on Vita. Got a secret tip for you, because this is also true for my next game. Have a modded Vita so that you can overclock it. Then install Vita Graphics, which is a plugin that allows you to control certain aspects of it. I set the frame rate, the frame cap for Sly to 60 frames per second. I overclocked my Vita. The game ran at 60 frames per second almost flawlessly the entire time. Wow, and that felt huge. Kind of amazing. Because that game on the game right out of the box is capped at 30. So, and it sounds like there's plenty of overhead. They just cap it at 30 to keep a consistent experience. But it was amazing. It felt so good at 60 frames per second. I was kind of blown away. So that's going to be the case for 2 and 3 on Vita as well. I'm going to go towards those. But in between, I've decided to finally try my copy that I've had forever of The Amazing Spider-Man on Vita that I bought. And then right after I bought it, it ran like ass. So I was like, well, I guess I'm never going to play that, because I enjoy that game. So same thing, Vita Graphics, overclock. I was able to go into the Vita Graphics and set the resolution for the game to tell it to never render the game above. Right now, I'm at 90% resolution of native resolution. So that's like 867 by 4 something. I'm getting most of the time around 45 frames per second. And unless you're in a really weird spot, and then it'll be like 25 and 25 to 30. Playable. Definitely for a handheld. I've been really surprised at that game on Vita, because since it was so bad whenever I first started playing it, I never got to the open world. And I'm really surprised at how well they were able to get the open world working on Vita. It makes me really sad that we never got to see. I don't know if you remember hearing about Ben Studio pitching a Infamous game for Vita.
Yeah.
I am like gutted that didn't happen, because between this and Gravity Rush, open world games can work on Vita.
They can. Didn't they announce an infamous Vita game like at the beginning and then never made it?
No, BioShock got a Vita announcement that never
came.
That
I remember. After the show, Brett, I'm going to need you to send me the information on how to do all the modded Vita stuff that you're talking about.
Okay, it's been so long, I'll have to kind of look around and remember. Oh. But there's...
If you don't know off the top of your head.
It's really... You can look up... It's really easy to do. I know that much. And then look up Enzo, where it permanently does it, so where you don't have to do it every time that you start your system. Huge boost, though, because I'm having a blast with The Amazing Spider-Man. I played this game on 360 back when it first came out in 2012 and enjoyed the hell out of it. So now I'm going through, and I am probably going to platinum this game on PS Vita, which is kind of a wild thing to say. But it's running pretty well. I think I'm going to drop the resolution a little bit more to try and get more consistent frame rates. But at work today, on our 10 o'clock break, I went down and was talking to my friend at work, and I was playing it. And he was like, "What are you playing?" And I was like, "I'm playing Spider-Man." And he looked, he's like, "That's kind of fucking crazy. It looks pretty good."
Yeah. I've always wanted to play that
every now and then it looks wild, right? Like it looks weird. Like certain hair on certain characters, like Dr. Connor's character model looks great up until you get to his head, and then it looks like there's like coloration on his character model, and then there's like a toupee on it because of the way that it tries to render hair. But Spider-Man himself in the suit look like really good. Gwen looks pretty good. Wendy Chang looks pretty good. So, I mean, the game's fun. It runs at a good enough frame rate. And man, so if you've never played that one, then what I'm about to say probably isn't going to hit as hard for you. But I don't know if you played any of the PS3 Spider-Man games that were beloved, like from Beanox, like Edge of Time and Shattered Dimensions.
Shattered Dimensions is fabulous.
Dude, great games. But here's the thing. Great games on incredibly fast production cycles and without the worry about having to develop an open world. The Amazing Spider-Man, for what it is, it's a tie-in to the movie, but it's an immediate sequel to the end of the first movie. Here you are. And this takes place at least before the second movie came out. They considered it canonical. I think the second movie kind of undid some of that. Good. But point being, the game's got a perfectly all right story. It's not the strongest thing in the world. But gameplay-wise, it did what any Spider-Man game would have thought to do. And it's really what Insomniac did, just to a better degree, because they had time and budget and no need to release around a movie, schedule. And with that being said, The Amazing Spider-Man gets really close to a lot of great ideas. And it just because it got rushed, it's a little off. Like The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is way worse, and you think it'd be better because of even more crunch development time. But all it is like, it's Arkham, but you're Spider-Man, which is exactly all it ever should have been. Because while Batman and Spider-Man are very different heroes, you think about the gameplay mechanics that Rocksteady set out for Arkham all those years ago will go work perfectly for Spider-Man, just with the added benefit that instead of having to be crouched up on a gargoyle statue to stealth kill somebody, you could just be on the ceiling and look down and drop down and stealth kill them and pull them up. It's great. It's really fun. Got good upgrade tree for it. There is an open world, but then there's like the missions that you do are within areas that you load into. Not that dissimilar to the Insomniac Spider-Man. The difference is that the Insomniac didn't have to worry about fitting within a movie story and worrying about a movie that was coming that was going to interact with the characters more. And they didn't have to worry about being out in a certain time, and they had way more budget. I feel bad for Beanox. They really got shit on, but this game reviewed pretty well. I think the PS3 version of this game got like a 71, which if you're talking about movie tie-in games, a 71 is a fucking killer score.
Yeah, it's not bad.
So, yeah, if you can get it running on Vita, since it's impossible to buy except for physical versions that are way too much money now, if you can get it running on Vita, which I think you can, then there you go. You get a chance to play it.
I'll give it a look for sure, because I've always wanted to play those. I'm a big Shattered Dimensions fan. It's on my list for the Platinum Challenge, but it's a frustrating game to play, so we'll see. Not frustrating is the wrong
Shattered?
word. Yeah. Not frustrating is wrong, but doing all the challenges and stuff seems like it would be frustrating. So
Yeah, no, I feel you.
and I know I
the
watched
last game on my list. Go ahead.
No, I watched a video on Nick AR. If you've watched his platinum stuff on YouTube, he did all of the Spider-Man games, and you're playing Spider-Man or Amazing Spider-Man 1. He did play. He's like, this is the most frustrating experience of all time because it doesn't track your collectibles or anything, and it's like Infamous 1, except without the like click to find the collectible. So I remember watching the video and it's 10 minutes of him just swinging back and forth trying to find this one thing that wouldn't pop.
That's going to be the hard part. That's where the resolution comes into play in a weird way, because since the open world is crammed down to a much smaller resolution, half the time that I'm swinging by the comic book pages, I don't even know they're there until the screen pops up with hit L to collect comic book page. And I'm like, okay, that means there's one near me. So I'll stop and use the web rush mode where you can look around at all the things you can interact with and jump to and slide to. And it's like, there's one. And so, yeah, that's my concern about platinuming it on Vita and platinuming it in general. But we'll see how that goes. At this point in time, I'm kind of just having I know that Switch has got a lot of games of this caliber and open world games and all sorts of stuff, but there is something really surreal about playing The Amazing Spider-Man in a game like that on the Vita. I don't know how to describe it other than now that it's actually running like it should to at least the mostly degree, and sometimes even getting close to 60 frames per second. I'm like, this feels wrong. This feels like this shouldn't be possible. And here I am.
Witchcraft. It's funny because I'm looking at Vitas on eBay and thinking about it because my Vita's kind of a nightmare, but it's weird. Like this one person has like 1,000 Vitas of all different colors and shapes and sizes. Like, how did you acquire all of this?
I'm so distrustful of eBay.
See, I'm not, because I feel as though because it's advertised as a Vita, if it's not a Vita, then I just fucking get it, just dispute it. But
oh yeah, for sure. It's just, I don't know, man. I get it. I'm lucky though, because I have friends. A lot of my friends around have just started kind of collecting old consoles again, and so I'm friends like, damn, I wish I had a PS3, and I'm like, I have two, and he's like, and I'm like, and they're like, can you sell me one? I'm like, I don't know, man. I kind of like having two.
Yeah, don't.
It means I don't have to worry about one going off, right? And then other friends like, dude, I want a Vita so bad. I'm like, I got two. I got the Slim and the OG.
The OG was the nicer one, right?
Dude, the OG, it's definitely the preferable way to go. This is where, since we're talking about Vita, this is the one downside. Since I've been playing it like mad the last week, I don't know if it's age or what. This is the first time, even whenever I was playing it in 2021 and I played all those PSP games and whatnot, I did not notice it to this degree. My thumb has been cramping from the analog sticks because they're so short and they're in a weird spot and the Vita's not thick enough. But the problem is all of the grips you can get for the Vita, I have one, they pressure fit onto the Vita and they like scratch it. Ooh. Going on, and then they can, depending on what you're doing, and they're really not super easy to get off, and then they create an area for dirt to get in and scratch up against them. So I'm like, I like my Vitas. They're both blue. They're really pretty. I don't want them to get scratched up. Like, they both look brand new still to this day. So I'm like, because like I have my Slim right here, which is what I'm playing Spider-Man on, and I'm actually severely debating playing it on my original because I want to see it in the OLED screen. Mm-hmm. But I have this little neoprene, pouch that you can, or at least could have gotten. I don't know if you still can. I've had this for years. Point being, it's never not in this. If I'm not playing it, it's in this. If I'm not playing my OLED, it's in my Founders Day. I don't know if you remember the first edition bundle that you could get a week early. It came with a leather case, and I still have mine, and I keep it in that. So my Vitas look in perfect condition, and I'm not hard on consoles, so I don't know, man. It's like part of me wants to get a grip because my thumb has been killing me. Like last night, whenever I was finishing up the Clockwork area in Sly 1, I was like, God damn, my thumb is hurting. And I got past it and went on. But yeah, I've been noticing it a lot. I'm gonna soak it up till I'm almost 30, and my bones are starting to be like, "Hey, your joints suck, bitch."
Yeah, it's that.
That's where I've landed on. So yeah, enjoy, have a good time. But if you have bigger hands like I do, I guess eventually the Vita starts to hurt them. So
Yeah,
I've got to
paws.
somewhat redact my statement on the Switch and the Switch Lite, because I've talked shit about them making my hands cramp. And at the time, it was true, and it wasn't for the Vita where I was playing it. And it wasn't. But I guess eventually all things make your hands cramp. So, last game, we got Ryan, otherwise known as Sweet Gran Turismo Jones, as you know, to play Pavlov. So we hopped on and sold him, because he's only played the PSVR 2 once since before this. So this is like his second or maybe third time putting the headset on in general. And he's blown away. That game is incredible. What it allows you to do and how it interacts with VR. Crazy. It is the top selling PSVR 2 game. So to no surprise, it's very good.
Looks very
Chris,
fun. So Brett,
we did the zombie mode and had a good time. It's like a zombie horde. And I'll tell you, man, this is where it's super cool, because we had, you can run, but you can't run while you have the gun up in any way. So I'm running around. I've got a revolver, because it's kind of like, it gives you better weapons as you go through the tiers. So the second tier comes, I pick up the revolver. I'm running around. The other two die. It's John, or Stingray X, one of our patrons. We were playing, and him and Ryan die. I'm running around this little map in this circle with like 30 zombies on me, and I've got a revolver, and because of the way the game makes it work, I'm having to hit triangle, which flicks open the actual, what do you even call that in a revolver? I'm dumb here, but basically the little spindle part. So I'm having to flick it open while I'm running. I'm having to keep the gun aimed downwards so I can still sprint in this circle. And I'm having to pick up into each individual bullet from my ammo pouch and put it into the revolver. And then you just flick your hand over and it pulls the casing, it pulls the revolver part back in. And I'm turning around, pow, 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 and then do it again. And I survived. And it was an amazing moment. But it was very fun. So get a PSVR 2, enjoy Pavlov. I believe in you.
Do plan to one day eventually have a PSVR 2. Problem is, Brett, I'm about to buy a Vita. So
which, if you keep going at this rate, you're going to pay as much as you would for a PSVR 2.
I'm about to
How much are they right now?
The one I'm looking at is a metallic red with a 64 gig cart, and that's $314. For the 8 gig cart, it's $199. With no cart, it is $119. Okay. But if I want a mod one, so I feel like if I mod one, I should also get another one with a cart, so that I can have that one be legit and don't, get kicked off or anything.
I don't know. I guess I'm being kind of ballsy, because it's not like they know I'm using Vita graphics. And even if they do, I mean, fuck them. All I'm doing is making your hardware work as good as it can. Yeah. What's the problem?
The graphics is not what I'm worried about. I'm worried about all the other stuff that I've heard you can do on a Vita that I am very likely to do on a Vita, because of how difficult it is to purchase games on Vita.
I haven't gotten there yet, so I don't want to say much myself. I'm playing games that I own currently, or that I can still buy.
I just
there
very
are
much
some
want to
games
play
on
Tales.
my list. Like I already owned all the Sly Cooper trilogy.
Yeah.
So that was nothing, right? I own the Jak and Daxter trilogy. Mm-hmm. And the upside to that is, now, because I have it modded, I'm just going to download the Jak and Daxter trilogy again and just go into Vita graphics and bump the resolution down to make sure that it runs more consistently. Go about my business. So I don't know, but I am with you. I don't know about how that works, and if they know, and if they'll hit you. So yeah, don't follow our lead.
No, don't.
Chris, we've been going way past when I anticipated, but you know what? We're going to do one question here, because we're talking about all these platinums I apparently got this week. I guess 4 platinums. That's pretty good. Though it's not good enough necessarily, because we have one person, Kuno guy, really blowing up the board. Yuna comes in with a question and says, so PSN has deleted all your trophy data among with everyone else. And to get it back, you have to plat one of the hardest games on your trophy set. What's the hardest game, and would you go for it to get your trophy back, your trophy data back? So it's not saying you have to replat everything. For some reason, in this mythical world, your data gets deleted, but Sony says we can find it and recover it, but you have to replat this game. It's your hardest game, and if you do it, we have all your trophy data back.
Well, here's the question:
is it New Vegas?
That was where I was going to go. Yeah, I have 3 in mind, and one of them is certainly New Vegas. But the question is it? I have to re-platinum a game, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just making sure, because if it's the hardest game on my list, like I'm sure there's like Demon Souls. Like, no thanks. I don't want to deal with world tendencies. So, okay, if it's the hardest on my list, it's just, I guess it depends on the definition of hardest, right? Because if
you know what? You might be right. I'm sorry. I don't mean to cut you off, but you might be right, because it says to get it back, you have to plat one of the hardest games on your trophy set, which is any game you've played. That's wild.
Oh,
I don't know. You want to give an answer for replatting one, and then if you had to go for the absolute hardest game that's on your trophy list at all?
So for replatting,
I don't even know the answer to that one.
Yeah, I'm gonna look once I'm done talking here. But I think if I had to replat a game, it would depend on what kind of hard you wanted, right? Because if you wanted me to want to die while doing it, the answer would be like you have to replatinum Destiny 2. But I think in terms of like hardest to actually get for me, it would be a toss up between Sekiro, New Vegas, and Resident Evil 2.
Okay. Sekiro definitely makes sense. Because if I'm not there to whisper sweet nothings about Days Gone into your ear, I don't know if you're getting past that ape fight again.
Have we told that full story on the show yet? I don't remember.
I'm pretty sure we have.
Oh, okay.
So
it's a great story. Yeah. See,
just hearing great things about a game you love somehow helped you.
I was like, Brett, don't fucking stop talking.
Ben Studio is indirectly responsible for your Sekiro play.
It's true. I should thank John Garvin for that. Yeah, just at the top of my list right now, like there's a lot of options. Like Neon White would be very hard. Diablo 2 remastered would be very hard. Dead by Daylight. Overwatch 2. You know, but like again, it just all depends on the definition. Like arguably the hardest one for me to get would be Babylon's Fall, because it doesn't exist.
Oh my god, did servers drop?
Yeah, it ended in February, so I never went back and did it.
Oh man, like I think I may know mine.
GTA
I think
4.
I may know mine. That is rough.
Killzone Mercenary.
Well, that's impossible though.
Yeah.
That's a little different. I get where you're coming from, but it's like you can't. You couldn't even if you wanted to.
But
that'd be cool though if Sony was like, we'll open up servers for you.
That objectively makes it the hardest one. If you can't do it, it's the hardest.
Yeah, but it's realistically no. If you can't do it, it's not even an option. Therefore, it's not the hardest because it's not even applicable.
Fair.
The hardest would imply that it's something that can be done. You just have to overcome great challenge, you know?
My answer is Fallout New Vegas.
New Vegas, yeah, that's fair. So this is rough. So if I'm looking at replatinuming a game, that's a loaded question. Maybe Terraria. But at the same time, I would absolutely do that. Terraria is a super fun game. And if you're telling me that I have to replatinum Terraria just to get my other trophies back, all that sounds like is a new excuse to play Terraria. I would bug the shit out of Chris and Saul and all my friends to start playing Terraria again, because that game kicks ass.
I don't have the platinum. I would play it right now.
I mean, if it wasn't platinum competition year, I don't know if I have time to spend on games that I can't earn trophies on. So unless this is happening, that being said, if I had to think about some of the games that I've actually thought about platinuming, and that are really hard to do from a design standpoint, there's no way in hell you could get me the Platinum Monster Hunter World. I love that game. It's a great game. Getting the Platinum requires you to get all of the crowns for every beast, both big and small, and it's ridiculous. One of the people that used to listen to the podcast ended up, I think there was like 800 hours.
Nah.
Kiss my ass. And the thing is, it's completely RNG based. So it could be 200 hours. It could be 3,000 hours. You can play until you're 80. If it's RNG based, technically you can play until you're 80. If you just got the worst RNG, you just be sitting there with arthritis in your knuckles. But god damn it.
My hands hurt so much.
The PlayStation Network is completely down. The Platinum doesn't even exist anymore. But you're like, I've been at it too long. I need this fucking crown.
You know what, Brett? Fallout New Vegas is an answer. But looking at my list, what I went through getting the Spec Ops The Line Platinum, I don't know if I would do that again.
Oh, is it a hard Platinum?
The FUBAR difficulty, doing that was one of the worst nights of my life. I remember I was in the Discord that me and you and Blake had, we kind of stopped using, I remember at one point on the last level just typing, I'm going for a fucking walk. I was having so much trouble.
I remember that. Yeah.
It might be that one.
Rough times.
Great game. Very hard.
Great game. I maybe I should try and platinum that though. That'd be kind of cool.
It's a great game.
The problem is I wish now, because this is a problem. I've been getting spoiled by the Vita's modded nature. I wish I could mod the PS3 and overclock it and get some of these games that ran kind of bad to be like, yeah, I can get it up to 45 frames per second. That's pretty good.
I just laugh because it's funny. I think I've said this on the show, but we're just going through the same thing over again as the PS3, where it's like this game runs at 30, but this game runs at 60. You know, it's all the same conversations.
It is, but somehow this is where we are. And I'm enjoying it. I'm glad that more games are running at 60 because that was a rarity in the PS4 era. So somehow the PS4 era just skipped that. They're like, you're going to play at 30 90% of the time and you're just going to fucking enjoy it.
Fidelity, dog. It's the most important thing when playing an input-based medium.
Yeah. I mean, sure, for a game like Detroit Become Human.
Yeah. That would be fine.
Yeah, make that shit sparkle and shine, bro. 30 frames per second's fine. I don't mind.
You know what, though? Believe it or not, Gotham Knights, I'd like a crisp 60. Personal opinion. You know what? I don't know why I'm telling you this, but since I'm looking through my list, throw Unpacking on your list.
Oh, I need to do Unpacking.
It's a fabulous game, and it's a super easy platinum.
Yeah. No, I've been wanting to just play the game.
A little tedious, but a super easy platinum.
Yeah.
You're putting shit away the whole time. It's tedious.
I mean, yeah.
But it's great.
Fair point. But considering we just talked about flying around a map and trying to spot a 1 pixel fucking sized comic book page on the Vita, it's sounding like I might be in a good spot.
yeah, I would say so. So you'll be all right.
All right, let's run through the community stake real quick. The community stake this week, of course, is based off of last week. The community stake every week is where we look at something we talked about in the last episode. We repackage it into a question, or it could be even something that we didn't talk about. And we reach out to you guys and allow y'all to spread y'all's thoughts on it so we can get some different perspectives. Gives you a chance to sometimes push back against things that we've said and offer us a different perspective, or just let us know some stuff about yourselves and your gaming history or gaming preferences. So that said, this week, the people who went over and found us on Twitter at Triangle SQRD, or went to the Facebook group Triangle Square to PlayStation Podcast, or click the link in the description below in any of our episodes, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on podcast services, and join our Discord. They were asked, with Konami opening a new studio and having announced multiple Silent Hill projects, it seems safe to say they are looking to come back to AAA gaming in a big way. With that said, would you like to see them return to the well of old IP for new games, or would you be interested in them creating a new IP? And to that, Got 3 answers we're going to run through. Rude Cold, one of our patrons. Hope you're doing well, man. He says, I would love them to produce a new 2D Castlevania game, but do I trust them to show it the love the series deserves? I'm not sure. There's plenty of indie devs that could help them, especially Motion Twin, and it would make sense with their return to Castlevania DLC for Dead Cells. I would love that, actually. Though at this point, you do plenty of things to get back into making that. I mean, Bloodstained, Ritual of the Night is a fantastic game because it's made by the original creator of Castlevania. So, why not give him the keys to the kingdom, right? Why not just go to him and be like, hey, man, you guys want to do it again, but with the actual Castlevania IP?
Mm-hmm. It's a very interesting conversation. Should...
Josh Hoop says it would be bold for them to focus on new IP coming out of the gate. They have way too many franchises that have not had any love in many years. Contra, Castlevania, Suikoden. Hey, Suikoden's getting some love this year.
Yeah.
Ask Chris.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the remaster called Suikoden 1 and 2 HD Remaster, Gate Rune and the Dunan Unification Wars. I fucking love that name because it sucks. It's not even like an anagram.
Bomberman also had a game recently. I mean, Switch launch, so I guess it's 2017. That's
Type
5
R
years.
or something like that.
Bomberman Super R or something like that. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I haven't enjoyed a game from Bomberman as much as I did Bomberman Ultra on PS3. Great game. And most of all, Metal Gear Solid or Metal Gear are all incredible franchises that would probably do well now. I say let's get those some new games, then maybe work out something new.
Yeah. I'm here for that. I would agree.
Last one we got here comes from our patron, Jehudi MD. He says, I think a combination of both would be great. A Bloodborne-style Castlevania, a third-person AAA single-player Contra, a new story in the Metal Gear Solid universe. They have a good number of games under their belt, but would also be nice to see something new from them, maybe a game or two. And clearly I think this goes to show, most people are excited about the well of games that they've not had any love for in a while. But I really think that there's something to say. When you look at a company like Konami, which is responsible for bringing in people who created some of the most iconic IP in gaming, it would kind of be a shame for them to come back to never do that once more. So for me, I definitely want new games in all these series, 100%. But I would actually be a little excited to be like, what would a truly hungry Konami that's willing to allow people to come in and do what they're saying, creators first or whatever it is, if that's truly their new mantra and they're coming back strong like they were in like the 80s and 90s and even the early 2000s, what does a new Konami game look like? Do we get another Zone of the Enders style? Do we get something that has that kind of level of stuff behind it? Do we get whatever the future generations will look back on and be like, wow, Castlevania? Or I guess my question is, like, we've talked about this a little bit before, Chris, but gaming is just old enough that we start to feel like every genre exists, which is probably true to a degree. Mm-hmm. But wouldn't it be kind of crazy if in this crazy world, Konami comes back, someone makes a new IP, and 20 years from now, someone's calling a game like a Metroidvania, but it's whatever that new game is, and they start using that as a descriptor for every game that's going to play like this? That would be kind of cool to see.
I agree.
Part of me likes to keep the dream alive, unlike Media Molecule. That
good one.
That we have not seen everything that there is to see. Though I'm curious if we've seen everything there is to see on a flat panel. I'm kind of starting to think that maybe a new genre exists in a different format. Like maybe VR will really bring something odd to the table to make you go, here's something new that just wouldn't be replicable on a flat panel screen. Maybe AR is that. But I want to hope that we've not reached the end of the genre, the idea that can spread off and create other games in that same vein.
It's interesting because I don't believe there will ever be a new genre. I think we got the last new genre video game 6 years ago.
And what do you think
nope,
that was?
7. Games in the vein of Pokemon Go.
Okay. So you think Pokemon Go was a new game?
It's the closest to a new game I can come up with in my head.
I mean, that's fair.
Because I
get where you're coming from.
I can't think of any other new innovation. I mean, I'm not the next innovator of the games industry, clearly, but I don't see it. I don't see anything else. It's kind of like how, I don't remember who it was that said it, but there's only 7 stories. You know?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. There's only like 6 genres. You're
permutating the same thing to give it something that fools you into thinking it's something different, but at the heart, it's really just this.
Yeah, because there's only, so I feel like it's the same with genres, right? Because even a new genre would end up being broken down, right? In a lot of ways, Pokemon Go is still just a walking sim.
Pokemon Go is
just literally
virtual geocaching. Sim.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. But it's like I said,
walk here, find this thing.
Yeah, exactly. Catch your Charmander and move on.
Yeah, and we'll keep putting new geocache sites for you to find.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where the reality of it is, right, like I can't think of a new genre, but it's kind of like how, I don't remember, I think it was Steve Jobs who was saying, like, we have to give people what they don't know they need. It's the same thing. I won't know that I want or need a new genre until a new genre shows up. Hits. But as of now, I don't see it. Because even like the most advanced AR game will still break down to FPS, third-person shooter, walking simulator, story-based game. That's it. There will be no more.
Like that. I like that's how your genres. We didn't even go into like platformer. Platforming just doesn't exist for you.
Third-person game.
All right.
It's what I'm saying. It can all be broken down into like 4 things. Just like food. It can all be broken down into 4 things. Soup, sandwich, cracker, burger. That's it. And arguably we can go down to 3 because a burger is just a sandwich, but elevated.
I was about to say, what are you talking about? Yeah, a burger is a sandwich. It's just specific things on that sandwich.
I'll give you. The 4th one would be taco. But those are the 4 food groups. It's the same with genres. They all break down. Cereal.
My favorite thing is to prove your point. Tex-Mex food in particular. I won't say Mexican food because I've only had it a few times and it seems much broader. But Tex-Mex in particular is proof that with the same 5 ingredients, you can make an entire menu of shit that you call different. But ultimately, it's just tortilla, rice, meat, bean.
Yeah. It all breaks down. Like pizza is just toast. It's all the same.
See, but I choose to view the world from a sunny perspective where all these things are, even if they're just permutations, they're all subgenres can be useful. Damn it. That's all I'm saying.
But it just helps. It helps calm the intimidation down, right?
You're right.
Like,
you are. Yeah, you're right.
Oh, Bloodborne's so hard. I don't know if I can get into that genre. And I just look at you and go, you've played a 3rd-person game before, right? Haven't you played Dead to Rights Retribution? You can play Bloodborne. They're the same game.
Oh, you've played Kane and Lynch, right? Let's just start putting some real fucking crazy. You've played what was that damn game for PSP called? Hold on, it's gonna kill me now that I can't think of it.
You've played Army of Two. Have you ever played Celeste?
Pursuit Force. You played Pursuit Force, haven't you?
Yeah.
Pursuit Force, Demon Souls, same game.
100%. They operate the exact same. There is no difference.
You can see your character and control them with the left analog stick.
Yeah. If you're good at MLB The Show, you can probably beat. Yeah, you can probably beat Battletoads. I don't see the issue here.
I love that. You've played Pac-Man. Bloodborne's no different.
Not at all. It's literally no different, Brett. You walk around, you kill things and eat their souls, i.e.
umbilical cords
pellets.
as well.
Yep. And then you eat the 4 umbilical cords. Hey, Brett, is it 4 or 3?
There are 4 in the game, but
thank God, because it makes this way more funny. There are 4 umbilical cords. What's in the corner of each Pac-Man stage? It's the 4 big pellets that make you stronger. It's just the same as the umbilical cords.
But you only need to eat 3 of them.
You only need to eat 3 of them. Same thing. You don't need to eat any of them. Pac-Man, Bloodborne, same game. That's all I'm saying.
Look, I'm
a borderline
right now. Dude, a Pac-Man game that's Bloodborne themed would be sick. It's like it looks like the hunter's hat. Like it's
So what you're saying is the bottom half of Pac-Man is his face. He's like the Crimson Chin.
Yes. Yes. It's just the hat and then a yellow thing that just opens and closes.
Yeah, that's like his hunter's blade.
100%. Chris, oh my God, hold on.
Oh, look, shit.
I know that we're talking stylistically about a game. If you pick up a Vita, well, I know you technically have one.
I have a Vita.
Let's fuck around and play Soul Sacrifice Delta.
I have that installed.
It's a fun game. I don't know how hard of a platinum it is, but I would imagine long, it's easier to do. It does seem long, but I love Soul Sacrifice, the first one. I actually haven't played Delta. I've only played the original.
Yeah, I'm down to do it. Let's do it.
Man. But yeah, going back to that Bloodborne themed to where there are like levels of umbilical cords and you have to go through them. You have to like the dots are red, so they're the blood. They're like little blood droplets. And you eat them, as you come into the old blood, you're able to eat the ghosts and the ghosts. I don't know what they look like, but yeah, I'm totally down for this.
I'm very in. Let's do it. Let's make it happen. Let's call Konami or Namco Bandai. The final level becomes like a Space Invader style thing where the moon presence it descends down, and it's like the moon presence just moves around like a ship in Galaga, and you're the little hunter thing, and instead of going side, suddenly it just pulls you up and you have to shoot at the moon presence. I'm just saying.
Do we want to develop? Do we want to develop like our own little, I think we should figure that out. Yeah. I've messed with games development. I can use Game Maker.
I'll write it.
I don't know if Game Maker still uses. You know what? Game Maker does support Vita development. We can make this game for the Vita.
Perfect. That way we are the only 2 people who can get that platinum. Easy.
I hadn't thought about that. If I made a game for the Vita, no, I guess you couldn't because Sony can't authenticate it.
It's all right. We're going. We went to see a couple studios last week. I fed Shuhei Yoshida, so they owe us a favor.
That's true.
Where else was he going to get 256 mozzarella sticks?
What was your name for that dish?
I don't think I named it.
Let's see. Mozzarella is already in the mag, right? So you just got to come up with words for mag that work for the dish.
Or Magzarella sticks.
I guess. Mozzarella.
Attack.
A lot.
Mozzarella attack game. I like it. Ooh, I'd play that game. That would be a fun game. Brett, what's next on the
Cactus Cowboys. They definitely work. Community's take is done. We didn't have. I put it out late today, so we didn't have as many responses. So thanks to you that actually did respond. We appreciate that. And it's good to see people still loving Konami because honestly, part of me was like, are people going to allow their distaste for how Konami did these things before to kind of sour them on letting them come back? And it doesn't seem like anybody's completely like, fuck Konami. Everybody's kind of willing to be like, oh, you have all this great IP. Please just come back and use it. Give it.
Let's wait and see when they announce Metal Gear Solid 6. Because they're going to do that and people are going to have opinions.
See, the people are going to have opinions over just remakes. But people are going to be like, well, it's just a remake of Kojima, so it'll be okay. Well, but the moment they start trying to make a new one without Kojima, it's going to be...
The remake is whatever, because all they have to do is get some canned response from Kojima that's like, yes, I don't care. I am my own person doing something else. Leave me alone. And then it'll
It's
be
a
fine.
video. It's a video of Kojima, but they just Microsoft Sam over his voice. I do not care.
It's like a TikTok video with that AI voice.
Oh god, dude, the TikTok filter that makes everyone sound the exact fucking same. I don't know if it's on everyone's TikTok. All my interactions with TikTok are from hearing shit from my wife's phone when she's on it for hours.
Sounds right.
And so sometimes she'll be sitting there and I'm like, have you just been watching the same person? She's like, no, it's all different. And she's like, it's a voice filter. I'm like, every single person sounded the exact fucking same.
I think it's because the voice filter reads the captions.
I don't know, man. I hate it.
I don't like it either. It's creeps
with a
me out.
fiery burning. I don't like TikTok. I hate TikTok, if I'm just being honest. But it's okay. I try not to judge people for it because I'm sure people are like, he spent all day on Vita playing Spider-Man. But that's okay. That's the life we live in. If you guys want to be part of the future community's take, remember, again, you can find us on Twitter at TriangleSQRD. You can find us on Facebook in the group Triangle Square to PlayStation Podcast. And if you're watching or listening right now, as you should be, if you're hearing this, go click down in that description, jump into the Discord, join us for our day-to-day talks, be part of the trophy competition, enter in, and suddenly whoop everyone's ass like Kuno guy is doing. Have a good time. Just come join us. Remember, if you're liking what you're hearing so far and you're on a service that allows you to rate and or review us, please consider doing so. Lets us know what you do and don't like about the show. Lets other people know whether or not you think we are worth the time. And if you're watching this on YouTube, consider liking and subscribing and sharing with anyone that you think would enjoy us. But we're going to go ahead and move into the news. And like we said, it's not a huge news week. So if it wouldn't have been for a handful of things happening today, the news may have been even more slim. First piece of news. Media Molecule has announced today that live service support for its troubled title Dreams is ending on September 1st. Players will still be able to play, create, and share content after that date, but the studio will no longer be updating the game past the 1st. Their announcement includes an exciting piece of news. Media Molecule is working on a new game, which is now the studio's focus. They didn't say much about the project other than the fact that the new game is not something taking place in the Dreams universe, which is to no surprise. So with that said, that means all of the MP awards and all the different stuff that goes around that, they're all going to be gone as of this year will be its final hurrah. This is weird because it's not a death sentence in the sense that they are talking about closing servers. People can still use this and do everything. It's just that they're not going to be furthering it any longer, which is both good and bad in my opinion. But Chris, I don't know if you've ever really been as bullish on Dreams. So what's your take on this? I mean, do you really think this is a hit at all for you? And then what do you think it is for, do you think Dreams was ever potential for much in your opinion? Or do you think this was kind of what it was destined for all along?
Well, they didn't, I don't know. It's weird because people clearly showed no interest and Sony seemingly had no interest in actually making it happen. If they had, they would have put it on PC by now. So to me, once it seemed like it was clear it wasn't coming to PC at any point, it was clear that it was never happening. Like they were just gonna keep it going for a while and let it go. Don't forget, like it didn't even sell out of the pre-orders. So clearly there was not much interest in this to begin with. Hopefully this just brings them back to making a game.
I'm a little in between on this. I think Media Molecule is one of Sony's most interesting studios, and I think they're the only studio that has maintained a semblance of PS3 era Sony. The downside to that is they're not as monstrously successful as all of the other first party studios that have went from making games that performed not that dissimilar to a game like Dreams to suddenly being Media Molecule's the outlier for having one of the only games that's not selling, 5, 10, 20 million copies. Which is a weird place to be because, 3 million copies of Infamous 2, which may not exactly be where it ended up, but it's not super far off, I'm sure, is a very different thing in comparison to, what happened with, I'm assuming, let's just say, if we're being nice, 1 million copies of Dreams. And at one point in time, I think 1 million copies of Dreams would have worked. But not anymore.
Well,
so my real curiosity here is that Sony's not shutting them down. I'm happy because I think they're small and they're very unique and they're worth keeping around in my opinion. But if they're not putting out games like all the other ones are, is there an actual pull the plug date? Like, if this next project doesn't just blow up, is Media Molecule gone?
No, I don't think Media Molecule will ever go anywhere because the person who runs that studio has a BAFTA, and I can't remember her name, but
Siobhan Reddy
has a BAFTA, so they will never shut that studio down.
Yeah. Siobhan is such an odd name. I think it's Siobhan Reddy, but it's something like that. Yeah, studio director of Media Molecule. I remember the first time I saw her name, I was like, what? Because it's Siobhan. I would have never thought Siobhan. But
No.
As far as I know, y'all let me know. As far as I know, that's it. Or as Chris's Cockney would say, Siobhan Reddy.
Siobhan Reddy.
Ray. Oh, yeah, I'm apparently supposed to say something in an Australian accent, but Josh never got back to me. I got permission from two of our Australian listeners to butcher their accent. He was supposed to throw me some stuff to say, but the only thing I can remember him talking about was that apparently shrimp on the Barbie is not something that they actually say, that was just from like an ad campaign.
I don't care, mate. I'm going outside to drink me Founders, and I'm going to throw some shrimp on me Barbie and feed it to one of my kangaroo friends. Got to get his Joey and put it into the daycare.
Pump the brakes, kid.
Hey, yo. I don't
The
need
man's
brakes.
national treasure.
I just ran over a gigantic spider, and then I get into my house.
Dude, why is your Australian guy like British? Shitty British.
That was a way better British accent than Australian accent.
Where were you going with that?
I don't know, mate.
Okay, I mean that. At least you. I mean, you know.
But I go swimming. Gonna get eaten by one of my Australian sharks.
If you've been listening this far, you should know that no accent is safe from Chris.
No, but at least you're not Cleveland.
Yeah. Whenever Shave Dog was like, if you're ever in the Cincinnati or whatever area, I was like, wait, Chris was talking shit about somewhere in Ohio. Was it Cleveland or Cincinnati?
Definitely Cleveland.
That's funny. All right, guys, listen. I'm curious about Siobhan and whether or not they'll close that. I didn't know. I didn't think about her having a BAFTA, although I'm not surprised. They're a creative studio, and the problem is that the only thing of value to Sony they've created has been Sackboy and Little Big Planet in terms of IP value, right? Like Tearaway, fantastic game. I'm probably going to replay it on Vita and get that platinum soon, but it just wasn't a big sales hit. Beautiful game, really interesting idea. Didn't do anything. Dreams took forever to make. Didn't do anything. I mean, crazy idea. People who are very passionate about it have made some incredible stuff. And it really sucks to see some of those people be disheartened to want to continue. I'm glad that the game's not closing forever, but this is unfortunate. To some degree, it kind of feels like seeing the last bastion of PlayStation 3 era Sony burn out. But I guess that had to have come sooner or later. Like it was always going to come. I guess it's cool.
Yeah,
if nothing else. I guess if nothing else, it's cool that Media Molecule got to be it because they're a pretty good symbol of that type of period for Sony. Because Japan Studio, which is what one of their other kind of quirky developers, is gone. They don't exist anymore. So Media Molecules live longer than Japan Studio, and Japan Studio, well, it's continued on. Japan Studio is much older than Media Molecule, but point being. Yeah. All right, look, let's go to something a little bit better known. So, State of Play, if you've been missing it, is returning tomorrow, or Thursday rather, but not too far from now. Thursday, April 13th at 12 p.m. PT, 5 p.m. ET, 10 p.m. GMT, 11 p.m. CEST, all the T's. Tomorrow, if you're listening as the show is released. So the show is billed as a new look at Final Fantasy 16. The show will feature over 20 minutes of gameplay for the title, just a helpful reminder to keep expectations in check. So Final Fantasy 16 is becoming the new Deathloop.
Oh, yeah.
Show it, baby. I'm not mad at that at all. Final Fantasy 16 looks incredible. Deathloop also looked incredible. And the more they showed it, the more excited I was. And that excitement paid off in droves. I only have positive things to say about this. I don't really I still want to see a PlayStation showcase. But as we talked about last week, I think games development links are making that harder and harder every year.
I agree.
So Chris, what are your thoughts here?
I mean, in the end, like, I want to see more Final Fantasy 16. It's probably, besides Baldur's Gate, my most anticipated game of the year. So show me more.
Oh, good. I was a little worried you'd be like, I hope that they come to the State of Play and announce that the game has been delayed to 2024.
No.
You're trying to win that Metacritic competition a little too hard.
I mean, listen, it would benefit my Metacritic if it got delayed, but it would not benefit me as a gamer. And,
yeah, point. Now, would you at least be more happy if they were like, Final Fantasy 16 is flipping to 24, and we're going to go ahead and release Final Fantasy 7 in November?
See, I would take that. It's okay. When we all play, we all win. So bring it out.
All right, Kevin Butler, let's go. We have a question while we're talking about Final Fantasy here. It comes from one of our patrons, Jehudi MD, coming back around. He says, what do you think of Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster's game help options? And he lists them: increased XP, faster game time, etc. for classic RPG games. Do you support them? Do they cheapen the experience? Do you think other similar games should implement such options? Chris, while we're talking about similar games, you've recently, not too long ago, you were playing Legend of Dragoon.
I was, yes.
For you, if Legend of Dragoon was given this kind of treatment, would you like to see these types of things in the game, or do you think it has a negative impact on them? I know you haven't played as much Final Fantasy, so I'm trying to think of games that are a little more in your purview.
I think all games would benefit by being shorter, right? So especially JRPGs, where I feel like a lot of the time spent grinding and spent doing battles to level your characters up. And I can't be upset that, like, I'm very happy that I can play Final Fantasy VI, because that's the one I'm looking forward to. And
great game.
That's what I've heard. And I won't have to spend 80 of the 100 hours grinding. Like, that's a cool thing. I know it probably cheapens the experience for someone who's like, I know Final Fantasy VI in and out. I can't wait. I'm going to maximize my grind. Like, yeah, I get that there's that level of it. But for someone like me who can't get through JRPGs, something like this that would maybe help me get through it is nothing but a benefit.
I'm with you on just kind of looking at you, because you're kind of talking about the faster gameplay, so the speed multiplier.
Yes.
I'm a big fan of that, because I don't really know why it matters. All it's doing is speeding up animations and speeding up text bubbles and allowing you to click through stuff and basically use the overhead of the new system to say, we don't have to wait for this to play out at this time. We can go ahead and super speed through this. And you're right. For times when you're looking at like just grinding a character out, like, dude, I think the old Pokemon games where you sometimes just want to spend, an hour going around and fighting and battling in the wilderness, in the grass to get your Pokemon up to stuff. I would love the ability to be like, yeah, let me do that at like 4 times speed, 10 times speed. Mm-hmm. I know what bubble cannon looks like. I don't give a shit. Play it at 10 times speed. I don't care. I'm just trying to get that XP. So for that sense, I don't really think that matters, because all it is, I get the... Okay, so he talks about increased XP, and I guess you could argue that a faster game time means that you're essentially getting increased XP because you were going to, even without that setting, right? If you're playing the exact same game faster, you're going to earn XP at a faster rate than you would if you played otherwise, therefore making it where if you played with that on and someone else played without it on, you would essentially have gotten increased XP throughout that time. So in the sense that I don't think it changes anything, I don't think it really cheapens the experience. I think it makes sense. It allows people who are very familiar with those games, who know when the lulls are, to be able to speed through them or act through them in whatever way they want. It offers an extra layer of control. And I think that kind of stuff makes sense. Increased XP is weird because the only thing I can imagine is that it's like an accessibility option. Someone who's not as good at the game can kind of be like, well, when I do win, I'm going to level up quicker as a nature of it. And I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, it's allowing people to play a game that's been around in some capacity for 30 years, 20 years. So it's like, is it that big of a deal? Probably not. I think overall, I would argue that it probably does cheapen the experience, but it cheapens the experience for someone who has the reference for that to be cheapened. At the end of the day, if they play the game and they still love it, then I guess it doesn't matter. I guess the flip side of that is if they play the game with all those on and then they beat it, and they're like, I don't get it. And it's like, well, yeah, but you didn't play the same game I did. You didn't play the game I fell in love with. You played a 10 times speed double XP version of the game.
But what's the difference?
Which is, realistically, I mean, I get it. Your experience with it is incredibly different because of the amount of time, the amount of grind, the payoff versus the challenge. All that stuff comes into play. But you're right. At the end of the game, we still just played the exact same game. It's essentially one person, whether they wanted to or not, was forced to have to enjoy it at a slower pace, and the other person was able to fly through it.
Yeah, I guess for me, it's just a thing of like, sure, like it makes the experience different, but like if you're a fan of Final Fantasy VI, are you really going to be upset that I become a fan? Are you really going to be upset that I become a fan of Final Fantasy VI, but I spent 20 less hours with it? No, we're just going to talk about the story and then not talk about the game again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think so. But the flip side, I think, is where it comes in. If someone goes, I think Final Fantasy VI is an overrated game, and they're like, well, did you just play? Yeah, I played it on the Pixel Remaster. Well, how'd you play it? I played it at 10 times speed with, double experience. Then, regardless of whether or not their opinion should still matter, someone's going to go, well, now we're not even talking about the same game. So the fact that I think for people who play it that way and still enjoy it, people are like, yes, new member into the Final Fantasy VI lover fan group. And then the first time that someone doesn't, and they don't enjoy it, and then they find out that they played that way, then it's an issue.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my hot take around that. Not that it should
matter.
I guess my hot take with that is more just like, if you're gonna be upset that someone played it in a different way like that, then you also should not accept me into your club if I loved it and played it like that. So if you're willing to accept me loving Final Fantasy VI, but I played it at 10x speed and triple XP, then someone who says it's overrated had the same experience as me and found the game overrated. Therefore, it all cancels itself out. They just think the game is overrated, and I just like Final Fantasy VI. So we go back to it doesn't matter.
No, I think I agree with that. At the end of the day, I think the biggest thing is that while this will undoubtedly bring in new players and new fans, I think these features are actually thought of for the most part with people who are already vastly familiar with the game in mind. I don't think anyone who's not familiar with the game at all wants to play it at 10 times speed because you don't know what the hell you're missing.
Yeah.
If you've played Final Fantasy VI a million times and you know when to speed it up, when to slow it down, what parts you want to enjoy, what parts not, it offers you a degree of control that you don't get in any other capacity. And yeah, it allows someone new to abuse it in a weird way and potentially miss half of the game by speeding through it all. But I mean, that's just them digging their own grave. And,
even at that point,
it's okay. Give people enough rope to hang themselves. That's what they say,
Yeah. But even at that point, I feel weird about it because if you're speeding through the cutscenes, yeah, you're not getting the same experience. But if you're speeding through the grind of battle,
Agreed.
It's the same game.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed.
Don't speed through cutscenes, speed through battles. That's it. There we go.
So you basically landed where I said, though. Someone will say, well, if you sped through battles and grinding, who's to say you didn't speed through the story that you say you don't like? And it just creates I guess what I mean is it creates that doubt in someone's mind once the moment that you don't like it. And see, when you still like the game, they're going to not think about that because they're like, he still liked it. So clearly he played. But the reality is you could love the game and have skipped through all the cutscenes and been like, yeah, it was a fun game. I liked it.
Yeah.
Cool character design.
Like I said,
the music was really banging at 10 times speed.
I skipped a lot of Midnight Suns, but I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. We'll see. I think it's fine. I'm going to play Final Fantasy VI. I'm going to speed through the battles.
This goes to what we were talking about the other day, where my friend and I was talking about how Mario is so gameplay driven and gameplay focused that it's never really focused on a story much. Like, it's got a loose plot to offer bare minimum motivation. Hey, the princess is missing. Go find her. That's more or less the fancy version of all the games. Like, yeah, they have a little bit more going here and there, and I didn't play Odyssey. I've heard that one apparently has a little bit more. But point being is that that's a series that is always focused primarily on gameplay, and Zelda to a big extent the same, even though it's got a crazy lore. And we were talking about how Sonic has always, from a pretty early time, really focused on the story and how different Mario and Sonic are. And people love Mario because of the gameplay, but when people talk about Sonic, most of the time people are talking about Sonic for the story and like, this character did this and this person and Shadow and how that plays into this. And that comes into here. The reality is that, is it wrong for you to love a game for strictly gameplay, even if it's a story-heavy game? Not at all. Is it wrong for you to hate a game for the gameplay reasons but love the story? Not at all. And that's just the reality. Like, it's fine that you love Marvel's Midnight Suns without having any idea what the hell's going on in the story. As long as you had a good time with it, why does it matter?
Exactly. I'm an evangelist for that game, so you probably shouldn't tell me that I didn't actually play it. I want people to buy it.
Well, you know what? Let's move on to the next piece of news here. We got Resident Evil 4 Remake has been released to incredibly positive reactions from the gaming community, unless you're Lily Gao, who voiced the voice actress for Ada in this game. She's been bullied off of social media, so unless you're her, man, why? First and foremost, someone did thetheir job. Someone was like, hey, I'll pay you to say these things in a microphone. And you go, yes. And then people were coming at you, fuck you, man.
It's weird. Because I put it in there.
You know who made the decisions? Not her.
Right.
The director made those decisions.
Exactly. I put it in there because I just wanted to give a big old don't do that, please, to people out there.
Stupid.
But also, like, she's fine. She's fine.
Yeah, I figured she was.
She's not good, but she's fine.
Yeah.
She plays Ada.
And again, I go through that. She was cast. This had nothing to do with her. She auditioned. The director was like, her. The director wrote her lines, wrote the dialogue, told her how to, directed her on how to say them. Maybe, Ada didn't sound sexy anymore. Do you think this voice actress is the reason? I don't know if that's even what it is. My point being is that whatever it is, Ada doesn't say this or doesn't act like this. That's not the voice actress. That is who wrote and chose this person to portray this character.
Right. Her
You're
voice
shooting
acting,
the messenger, man.
Her voice acting is very even keel. It's very one tone, one note. But I think given some of the stuff that happens in the game, you kind of would find out why Ada is a little dejected and uninteresting. That's how I read, or uninterested. That's how I read her voice acting, as kind of like, well, I'm doing my job and I'm not particularly excited about it,
Yeah.
You find things out in the game, you're like, okay, I see why she'd feel that way,
It's people want that playfulness that came with 4's odd tone. Yeah. And that's gone. And so since Ada's been hit by that, and I've heard people complaining about Ashley, who's also been hit by that to some
degree.
Great. So point being, that's where we are.
Yeah.
Moving on to the news, though, Capcom has added to the fervor around the title by adding optional time saver microtransactions to the title. They've got their EA on, something they've done with each of their other titles after reviews came out. The microtransactions are exclusive weapon upgrade tickets sold for $2.99 each, or in bundles for $7 and $10. The tickets allow the player to access the upgrades without spending the requisite 30 spinel or varying amount of in-game currency depending on the weapon. However, there's some good news for players, as free the Mercenaries mode was added to the game in the same update. The mode has been a staple of the franchise since the original release of Resident Evil 4, and this continues it on. So, the good, the bad, the ugly. Now, there's a few conversations to be had around here. First one that I've seen a lot of people talking about, and I think is at least worth mentioning, is there a reasonable argument to say that it's reasonably shady for Capcom to do this after the review period, in which they don't have to worry about any of the detractions from people talking about microtransactions because they've added them after the Metacritic is more or less set in stone? What are your thoughts on that?
No.
Jose? So you don't think there's anything bad about that? What would you view this as?
What do you mean view it as?
I would say this, like, I think I agree with you in that I'm not necessarily sure this is Capcom saying, like, wait until the game reviews and then add all this crazy shit because they're being maniacal. But what do you think the driving factor behind this was? Do you just think that, like, why not do this day one if you're going to do this so close to launch? Why do you think that they particularly, like, specifically held off? Is it just player retention?
No,
for people who can't get it, retain them? Or do you think this is kind of like what we're talking about in the last discussion, where it's essentially accessibility, where it's like, well, if you can't do it, then you can just spend $10 on a rocket launcher that never runs out of ammo?
It's a time saver. Look, I think the thing is, right, the interesting thing, let's say the day one patch for Resident Evil 4 had microtransactions in it. Right? Sure. Then this conversation wouldn't be about, is it ethical to put them in after reviews? It would be about, wow, Capcom concentrated on microtransactions instead of fixing problems with the game. That's what the conversation would be. Right? So this is very easy to follow. First update.
I think the same conversation would happen, though, to be fair, because most reviewers are typically playing a non-1.0 version for games like this.
Yeah, but
so
you would have...
Same question might happen. It's like, well, the reviewers didn't have microtransactions, and then day one update added them. I'm not disagreeing with your point so much as I'm saying both would happen. It would be people mad that microtransactions were added in a potentially unethical way, plus the fact that the day one update wasn't even focused on fixing the game's problems, just adding in ways to nickel and dime us. That would be the online conversation.
I actually don't agree with you at all that the conversation would happen, because tons of games add microtransactions and then they do it. I'm sure, I can't tell you this for sure, I've never played a game pre-release, but I don't think every game is going to have the full suite of microtransactions in there, because why would they put a suite of microtransactions in for reviewers? Right? You think fucking Joe Dickface is IGN is buying microtransactions for Resident Evil 4? I don't. So why would they put those in there? The thing
it depends
for me,
on the
right?
game. Like Resident Evil 4, 100% doesn't really change anything. Yeah. A game like Anthem, you would hope that the multiplayer and the store and stuff are up so that you can understand how you interact with it, how the game allows you to either buy currency or earn it in game, and then if that's interchangeable or if there are items that can only be bought with money. That's an important part of a review for that type of game, but it's not an important part for a review of a game that doesn't have an online component. So to your point for Resident Evil, it doesn't change much of anything outside of, I guess, allowing someone to review it by beating it with an infinite, ammo gun and then saying the game was too easy.
But that's not even what those
it only
do.
matters. Yeah, it only matters insofar as it affects the review. If it negatively impacts the review, then sure, there's a reason to say the person being able to buy this gun that does this, go back to what we're talking about. Is it cheapening the experience?
Yeah. Look, I
only
think
if it's negatively impacting the game.
The point where I was trying to go is more that this is the first update since the game is out. Right?
Okay.
This is the update that brought it with Mercenaries. Okay, so sure. I think I don't think you do it day one. And and they did it in the first patch that came out, so I don't really see an issue. It's and again, for me, it's literally, it does not affect the game. It just makes it slightly faster. And even then, you don't need it. I fully upgraded 2 weapons in one playthrough. It's literally just, I don't feel like doing this. And then you do it. Yeah. That's all it is. So to me, I have no issue.
See, I think I have no issue on like the ethical part. I can understand it. But at the same time, if anything, I would prefer them to do it this way insofar as what we talked about, where developers are being hit with negative feedback. Basically, if it doesn't score a certain Metacritic, then they're not going to get the bonuses that they were promised or a certain level of bonus. To some degree, yeah, if the game could be put out in a way that's going to heighten its Metacritic in terms of how it impacts employees that way, then great. As far as people view Metacritic and critic scores over their decision to buy, it's questionable. Like, yeah, in an ideal world, it'd be nice to know that this was going to happen. Even if it wasn't out day one, it'd be nice to know it was going to happen so that you can say it was clearly communicated and we just didn't want to add it until this update with this or this. But take all that away, and I think I would be hypocritical right now to say I don't care at all, because I think that this goes into this is a little different in terms of the idea of time savers, because I think there's a really strong argument to be made that sometimes DLC or microtransactions rather that can be viewed as time savers could easily be looked at and go, it feels like they purposely slowed down something in the main game to try and push you towards buying this. And a good example of that, in my opinion, was how I felt in specifically Assassin's Creed Odyssey. And I've talked about this before. So if you're a newer listener, this may be new to you. If you're older, then you've heard me say Assassin's Creed Origins, I did not have this problem where I felt like my XP rate was fine. And then in Odyssey, the game was constantly pushing to me where I couldn't do the next story mission without doing a shitload of side content, like hours of side content. And I was like, man, this is like really bumming me out. And I was like, what the hell? There's a double XP multiplier. And then I started looking, and people who were buying it were saying like, yeah, when I bought it, the game started feeling like the way that they gave you XP in Origins. And I'm like, well, that's what I was kind of hoping for, but I don't want to give them $10 to get the XP rate that I feel like should have shipped with this game. And yeah, their design was probably, we can motivate people to play the side content we spent time developing. But, you know, it's easy to look at that and go, hey, day one having a double XP boost as a time saver still looks to me like you changed the XP rate so that you could charge for XP rate for people that wanted to try and just move through the game in a reasonable pace. And I fought pretty hard against that, and I quit playing that game because I think it was badly designed in that aspect, and I've not gone back to it, and I probably never will. So for me to say that Resident Evil's nothing is not entirely the case, but at the same time, I guess it would speed the game up for you, but I don't know. This doesn't feel the same as that. It doesn't feel like they designed the games, figured out a good cadence for upgrading weapons, and then said, all right, now make it harder to upgrade weapons, but allow people to spend $7 to make it easier.
Yeah.
If that was it, maybe I would agree.
Like I said, I see no roadblock in the game itself that would make me feel like, oh, I have to do this. If I was,
or at least I'm strongly pushed to do this.
Yeah, it was one of those things like when I fully upgraded the Red 9, if I'd gotten to a point where I saw that and it was like, you can use one token, you can use 100 million pestis or one of these little cards, then I'd be like, okay, this is gross. But it's like, it's 100,000 pestis. You're fine. It's unnecessary. Actually, I think the bigger thing is you'd be kind of stupid to buy these. So like, just don't. But I don't see anything wrong selling them. Just like I know that you were talking about AC Odyssey. I don't think the XP boost is that big of a deal because the game is designed for you to do all the side quests. So that we're not here talking about whether that's good or bad game design. That's a whole separate issue. But the design of the game is for you to do the side quests. So the XP is balanced for that. You want to skip all that content, then yeah, there's a double XP. But I don't think we'd have that conversation around AC Odyssey if they'd never put it in there. So their mistake was doing it, not...
I'll tell you this much. I think the conversation still would have happened because I didn't even know there was a double XP boost until I started looking and being like, why the fuck is this game so much slower with XP than Origins, which I just played, and the games are built on a similar foundation? What the hell's going on? And so, yeah, you're right. It's a different conversation, but I would argue that AC Odyssey is bad game design. You purposely would slow down the pacing of your story to lock me behind levels so that I had to go do side content that was not nearly as compelling. And you took the wind out of the sails of your own story because every major story mission you wanted to make 4 levels ahead of where the player would likely be. So they've got to go do 5 hours of side content, 2 hours of side content. It's kind of like what I talked about in Spider-Man, where it's like, this person's going to die. Let me swing around a little bit and see if the neighborhood needs me.
Yeah.
It is inarguably bad design to be like, hey, here's some momentum for the game story, but let's pull back on that entirely and lock it behind something dumb. It's bad game design.
How about you stop and do some crimes?
Or how about you stop it to do some this person's gonna die. Oh, you know what? It'd be a great time to go mug a liquor store.
It's like that meme as Spider-Man goes up to someone who needs help. He's like, somebody call an ambulance, but not for me, and then shoots the guy and runs, swings away.
Oh man. So we got a question from one of our listeners, patrons, Josh Ayers. He says, would you prefer to earn the RE4 unlocks or buy them, or would you prefer that they make some of the harder ones easier, like they did with the hand cannon in RE4 with the Mercenaries mode? You can get S on all maps in Mercenaries, or beat New Game on Professional with no special weapons, and that's how you get it. So I kind of think that we inadvertently covered that. It sounds like, as far as Chris is saying, he'd rather earn them, and he thinks it's kind of personally, he wouldn't see the value in buying them because the challenge and the gameplay and the fun that you have playing the game in order to upgrade it usually is going to meet that. Does that fit for you, Chris?
Yeah. It's like we were talking about it in the Discord, and I was like, I like RE 2 and 3, but it's too bad that my platinum is cheapened by that, having all that stuff there. So yes, I like to earn them.
I'm saying I would rather earn them. The option to buy it ultimately doesn't really chafe me in any big way. It goes back to, it's funny how this is all kind of in line with that idea of help options that Final Fantasy games have. And he talked about, should other games, similar games, implement such options. We're seeing modern games implement these options right now. You just have to pay for them instead of them being baked into the game. So that's an interesting choice. Though some games are still pretty wild. If I remember right, TT Dog was talking about, and I didn't know this until he said it, apparently Control has a one shoot to kill toggle option in its settings.
Really?
I don't know if it's like a difficulty, and that difficulty makes all things die in one hit, or if it was an option. I don't know, but he talked about it, and I was like, what? So yeah, you didn't have to pay for that. That was just, hey, do you have fun with this game but are finding parts of it annoying? Shoot everything and kill them in one shot. That's pretty wild.
Thanks, devs. Mr. Lake, devs. Thank you, Mr. Payne.
All right, moving on. Sony has patented an upgrade for the DualSense controller. The patent itself would allow for the controller to cool and heat up depending on what is happening in the game. The patent covers a specific type of material that would be used inside the controller that would be, quote, elastically deformable, end quote, and connected to the circuit board. The patent does also state that using this material would improve haptic feedback if they switch to this material in new controllers rather than hard plastic. As with all patents, though, just because it's filed does not mean Sony and PlayStation have any actionable interest in making this happen. So, initial thing on this, Chris, do you remember before PS5 came out, there was some talk about having it to where at the time we didn't know DualSense, but the PS5 controller might include biometrics readings to where it could tell the temperature of your body and your blood rate. Do you remember those days?
Yes, I remember that.
Clearly we didn't see that happen, but if I remember right, there was a patent for that as well.
Believe so.
This feels an awful lot like that patent. Sony's doing it just in case some weird thing ever hits. They've talked about it, figured out how it would work, and they're like, great, if this fad ever starts to hit gaming, we can spearhead it, and we already have a patented product ready to go that other people can't ape. Bam. I see zero reason as to why this would currently... In what use? And I'm not saying that it can't be. Really, let's put it through here, Chris. Can you think of a game where the controller heating up or cooling down would further your immersion in such a way that you were like, I can't believe I've never had this in a controller?
Not flat screen.
So you think this is for VR?
I think it would work best in VR.
You go to
because
touch,
it would be cool.
You stick your hand in water and the controller gets colder.
Yeah. Or think about it.
That's a cool idea.
You're playing Call of the Mountain and you're climbing a mountain and it starts off relatively warm. And then by the time you hit the peak and there's snow on the ground, it's freezing cold. It would be cool. I don't want it.
I'll give you that.
But I do think it would be. I could see like cool application to it. No pun intended.
This strikes me as something that I would be very concerned. Like if they announced it, that I'd be very concerned about the longevity of how well it could work for long-term use in the controller, because that means you're constantly applying some level of heat and cool in some way to this plastic and this material that is going to have some reaction to that. When does it eventually go out? The upside to this is that we've had heated and cooled steering wheels for a while in cars, and they don't seem to go out immediately. So something's happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Heated seats, it's a seat, very different thing than a controller. It's not battery powered. My thing would be, how are they doing heat in a way that it's not dangerous for the battery? That's like my immediate thought was like, wait a minute. That would actually be funny. The heat is literally just a chamber that opens that instead of running the heat through the heat sink, it passes it through to where your hands go and it naturally uses you to conduct the heat out so you feel it. Yeah. That's actually a pretty simple solution.
Yeah.
And the cold is see, they're talking about it being like this elastically deformable material. What I'm talking about kind of works, and all it would be when you want something to be cold, move a thing and have it to where the liquid cooled water is moving through and touching your hand and it feels cold. And then when you want it to be hot, have the heat of the battery or whatever going off on your hands.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this is a really cool concept that I see no use for. And it's like we talked about an hour ago. They'll have to prove it out. And once they prove it, maybe I'll be excited. But I don't see it.
Well, we just talked about Resident Evil, right? We talked about games that are kind of scary or can be tense and have that. I don't think temperature is going to necessarily change in that regard, but going back to that one we were talking about with the idea of biometrics and that it can tell how much your hand is sweating and you can use that information to somehow feed the game. Do you feel like there's a way? Do you feel like you would be interested? And I think the answer is no. But do you feel like you'd be interested, or the market at large would be interested enough to justify the idea of a controller that you only buy for certain genres? Because, like, I say certain genres. The idea of being able to feel your heart rate and everything doesn't have to only be used for horror. It's just the most obvious use case. Stay with me for a second, because go back to Spec Ops: The Line.
Oh, okay.
Make a new game with a bunch of questionable things that you're doing, and the game can sense that you're starting to get nervous or not sure if you want to go forward with the action that you're having to do, and the game can use the information of your biometrics to somehow do something. Maybe it speeds up or slows down the haptics. Maybe, who knows? I don't know the best way to go about using it, but maybe there's a way to use that to play off of odd moral dilemmas. A new Infamous game comes out. You're asked a question that's so morally gray that you actually start to sweat at the idea of having to choose one. It's an actually good Infamous decision game, unlike Second Son. This technology gets used there. But the problem with this seems that why would they ever put this into an every console controller? Then the question becomes, would you really spend $100, $120 on a controller just so you could have it heat up or cool down or tell your heart rate?
Doubtful.
Someone would.
Yeah, someone would.
Not enough people? I don't know.
I mean, we're asking that question about PSVR 2 right now, so see how that goes.
Oh, yeah. Which actually, I don't think you put it in here, but we can quickly talk about that. So clearly VR has been being the whole industry, the whole games media has been treating VR like it's been selling like trash and flopped. And then numbers come out, and it turns out it's on record to outpace PSVR 1. It's pretty much outperforming almost every other VR market ever on the headset in terms of sales to the time period in which we're in. It seems that what's going on is, for some reason, PSVR 2 is being looked at as though it's supposed to be compared to actual console sales. And the fact that selling 300,000 PSVR 2s in a 1 month period is apparently bad because there's 40 million PlayStation 5s out there, which, sure, if you look at that metric, it is not great. But if you look at the metric of how much quicker it sold through that number than PSVR 1 did and Oculus did, and you look at the fact that there's less PS5s now at the time of release of PSVR 2 out in the wild than there were PS4s in the wild at the time of PSVR 1's release, it doesn't paint such a grim picture. But this kind of goes into the thing where it feels like niche products always get judged as though they're supposed to be mass market items. And I would think that Sony does not expect PSVR 2 to be a mass market item yet, but they're hoping that it can push to become that. Like at the end of the day, I bet they want PSVR 2 to do what Quest 2 did, like 14 million units. That's a lot of units. But just because it only hit 300,000 doesn't mean anything, Like that, it's doing fine. It's outperforming its predecessor and outperforming everything else in a small period of window. It's fine.
It is fine.
I don't know. I'm telling you, Pavlov was awesome.
I'm sure it's gonna. They need to just drop the price. They got to bite the bullet. I know that's like a hot take, but it needs to be less than the PS5. I'm sorry.
That the hot take there is that, arguably speaking, that might help them sell them even quicker. But if it's outpacing PSVR 1 and outpacing pretty much every other VR headset within the same time frame on the market, why would you drop the price?
Fair point. It depends. Do they want VR to be mass market or do they want VR to be niche? It's just a decision. If they want it to be mass market, they can't charge $600.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I am a little surprised they didn't just go ahead and buck down and say $499.
Yeah.
It's the same price as a disc drive PlayStation 5.
Jesus Christ. Just $499 with a controller and then throw in the charging thing that you need. From what I understand, you basically need it to charge your controllers properly. Throw that in and charge that $650, and you make your money back and you're good. But give me just the VR headset and the controllers for $5, and then I think that would get me in most likely. I'll still buy it eventually for $6.
Change. That's interesting.
It's a mindset thing. It's the same reason why everything is priced $499 instead of $5. It's just a mindset thing. I would rather spend $500 on a PSVR than $600. I don't know why.
Well, $549. I mean, we've at least got to throw out the right numbers. It's because you don't need the bundle. I already have a Horizon. We game share. There's no reason for you to get the bundle.
Sure.
You're not even particularly excited for Horizon to begin with, I don't think. So with that in mind, actually, I think you might like Horizon. I think you might like Call of the Mountain more than you like the games. I'm not even kidding.
I believe it.
Yeah. Let's throw that out there.
I'll get it at some point. Again, buying a Vita now for some reason.
Good luck, dude. I would advise you look locally. Just look and see if anyone's selling locally before you go diving in. Because somebody the other day posted on Twitter that they found one local for like $130 that was an original OG in great shape. That's a steal.
You're right. I just found one for $120 on Facebook.
So I'm telling you, dude.
Yeah, not bad.
I'm telling you. I mean, as long as it's in better shape than the one you have, since apparently the one you have is a monster.
Yeah, it's got like a dent, a scratch in the screen. That's pretty bad. But honestly, the only reason I'm even looking... Yeah, I have a Slim. I have a this boy. The only reason I'm really looking is because I want to mod one and have one that's just a regular Vita on it.
It's beautiful.
See, but I like that because I was looking and they have this... Someone who's listing a bunch of them has like, here's a lime green and white one that I think is sexy, or the metallic orange is sick. So we'll see.
There's some cool Vita colors. There really are. Good luck, man. There's one that's
that.
khaki and black that looks surprisingly good. And I'm not like a khaki guy by any means, but
I saw that
it's
one.
a slim.
It does look good.
And it looks good. Yeah. All right. So we have a question since we're talking about PlayStation hardware in a sense with the DualSense controller. We have a question from No Fate. This is in regards to the Tom Henderson stuff. So, we talked about Tom Henderson last week, and if it was going to be a handheld, what do we think of it? Well, Tom Henderson's come out and said that this is going to be a device that is a handheld that is focused specifically on remote play.
Mm-hmm.
So, always online, not a surprise, but not apparently streaming focused, rather specifically remote play, playing games off of your PlayStation 5 that's at your house on the go, separate from your PlayStation 5. And that it's, supposed to be coming out before the PS5 Pro that is apparently going on. So No Fate says the only issue I have with this handheld rumor is it should have been released with the launch of PS5. This would have allowed full support from the beginning as standard. Now it runs the same risk of the Vita being launched mid-gen, but I hope the rumors are true. I'd buy it. I prefer this to the Elite controller. I'm curious what he means. I think he's talking about PS3. Vita released in an odd spot for PS3, so it didn't have a lot of the functionality they talked about with remote play and all this stuff with PS3. It only worked with a handful of games, like Eco and Shadow of the Colossus collection was one of them. It was very few games. I think MLB might have been one of them that it was remote playable or at least cross-play and whatnot. So it didn't really get its full swing until PS4 hit, and PS4 was built with the Vita in mind, and they were able to talk to each other better. I guess that's what he's saying here. So I think his worry would be that for some reason the PS5 games that were made early on may not be as supported. But one thing I'll tell you, No Fate, is that I think that the upside here is that since this is built for specifically remote play, and we already know PS5 has remote play capability for your phone, and it's built in from day one, if that's all this handheld is, strictly a device with a screen, controls, and a battery that has a Wi-Fi processor and enough to power the screen just to say, hey, we're going to pull what's on that system and pull and show it on your screen. There's no reason that any PS5 compatibility would be an issue. Every single game would work because all you're doing is using this device as a controller and a screen. You're essentially still playing your PlayStation. So I don't think you run the risk of that. Personally, I don't know how I feel about the idea of it in general because of the fact that it's focused around remote play. Chris, you and I talked about, I could see them going with something that is remote play and streaming focused. I don't see the value of it having zero streaming focus at all and being strictly hey, remote play. Do you view remote play and streaming mostly the same, or do you think that this is actually an important difference? That would it change you buying the game or buying it if it even came out?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Remote play and streaming are completely different. 100%. Because if it was
both of them are streaming, it's just very different environments.
Remote,
because one you're streaming play, from your house.
I have to do it on, as far as I can tell, I have to do it on the same Wi-Fi, or at least has to be on Wi-Fi.
Yeah, your system has to be, well, it doesn't have to be Wi-Fi. It can still be hardwired, but yeah, because you can remote play from your phone without being on Wi-Fi. You can use your cellular data to just stream into your PS5.
I think that's true, actually, because I haven't been able to do that, or I wasn't able to last I tried.
Let me find out. You've got me genuinely curious, but I'm pretty sure because my phone's never on Wi-Fi, so I'm on 5G right now. Apparently, I haven't opened the remote play in so long that it's telling me to sign in, confirm, and continue. All I want to see right now is if it'll let me connect my PS5. So PS5, apparently I have to update the app. We'll come back to this. I want to see once I update the app what it allows me to do.
So
let's go through what it is. What is exciting about one versus the other to you?
If it was cloud streaming, I feel like I could play that from anywhere. Whether it's using my phone hotspot, whether it's using whatever, and I'm not tied to my PS5. If I had to do it, and I think with remote play, In my experience, you might prove me wrong. You have to be on Wi-Fi, or at the very least, or the same Wi-Fi as the PS5. I don't know that for sure, but I that's my biggest problem. If I can't,
it's a setting. Just to help clarify the situation, I'm in the Remote Play app. Naturally, if you don't change anything, it'll tell you need to be connected to Wi-Fi. Doesn't have to be the same Wi-Fi as your system, but it has to be Wi-Fi. But if you go into your settings, you can go to mobile data and you can flick over and tell it to use mobile data. So I just did that. And I'm hitting PS5 and I'm hitting mine, use mobile data, searching for connections via the internet. So I'm also curious because this is strictly viewing, this is separate device. So, 5G mobile data versus my Wi-Fi that my PlayStation's connected to. I've got good signal on both. So I'm curious, how long it'll take, because that's the other thing. How do you feel about having to wait and find a connection for either of these? The idea of having to connect to the PS Now or whatever you want to call it, the PS Plus streaming servers, versus having to connect to your PlayStation that's at your house via your Wi-Fi and or internet setup. Like I clicked on this like 20 seconds ago and it's just now finally kind of making progress. I'm not even kidding. This is enough to annoy the shit out of me to where I would just put this down and be like, I don't fucking care.
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm at.
Oh, well, there we are. Okay. So I have virtual. Wow. Interesting. All right. So right now on my phone, I am on my PlayStation 5 with a virtual controller. I didn't even know that existed. This is kind of weird.
Yeah, I don't like it. Look, if I'm wrong,
dude, there's haptic feedback. This is weird.
On the phone?
Yeah, but I'm not playing crazy. The game. This is just when I'm going through the menu and I hit the buttons. I think it's just the phone like touch haptics, but this is weird.
Vibrating.
All right, let's see. So go ahead, continue with your thoughts on it. I'm mainly curious. I'm actually going to launch a game and see what happens here.
I think that the biggest, I at this point now, I don't know, right? I don't know, because if you can get a good enough connection and it runs and you can play it well, maybe it's fine. I didn't know that setting existed. I think to me, I'm more secure in the idea that it just being a cloud streaming thing, I could understand it and maybe be a little sympathetic towards any issues.
Sure.
But I need to know. And that I need to see all of it. If I can, like I'm going on vacation with my girlfriend next week. And if I could take this and be like, I'm just going to grind out some MLB The Show so I can get this trophy done, that would be fine. And that would make it interesting. I just don't know if that's possible. And I don't know what the latency is. I don't know if this is a thing where it's like, oh, if I'm taking a break at work, it takes so long that I actually can't even play anything. You know what I mean? So it all depends on all that. There's a lot of factors to it. But
so I would say it took about... Go ahead.
My experience just with cloud streaming through the Forbidden Xbox has been good. And I was able to play that on the bench at my old job outside, and it ran well. That's actually where I discovered Children of Morta, which I ended up platinuming on PlayStation and paying for. So as of the current moment, I'm more comfortable with an idea of it being a streaming box and not having to use my PlayStation 5. But I could be wrong. Plus, wouldn't it? And I don't know that. Obviously, this was a detail that we don't know yet. But my question would be, if I can use this device and someone else can use my PlayStation, like, is this something where if me and my girlfriend want to play Overcooked together, she could play on the PlayStation and I could play on the Q or whatever it was called? Is that a possibility?
At least as it's being talked about, no.
Then
this is strictly a remote play. So you would, if you were playing on it and someone was at home, they couldn't use your PlayStation.
Yeah, I don't see it.
So I'll tell you, I'm playing Chia right now just to see how it's kind of going. And I'm playing with the virtual keyboard. or the virtual controller, which is odd. I don't know how I feel about it. It's not awful. It's also not great. And so this kind of goes to my thing of it means that you're releasing a hardware that is very limited based off of people's like, it's not going to have cell reception like your phone would. So what are you doing? Is it going to be a Vita situation where you have to add this device to your data plan like an iPad just so you can play it whenever? Or do you always have to have Wi-Fi? And if you do, that is a huge cut down on what the ability for this thing even is.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I don't know. I'm not feeling super bullish on this idea. If they are doing this and this is truly what it is, I don't see the value. I'm not saying that there's none, but I don't see the value in such a way that this would be your handheld offering, and why you wouldn't just be like, hey, double down on the backbone and people using their phone for remote play. Because I look at this and I think, PlayStation has streaming, but it's apparently, from what some people say, let's just say in this world it's true. If Microsoft streaming is better than PlayStation Now or PS Plus as it is now, if it's better, then why would Microsoft, who's making big bets on having their stuff on as many devices as possible, why would they not make a handheld that is built to connect to xCloud and to connect to remote play and do all these things? Why would Sony be the one doing that when Sony is arguably further behind in that particular aspect of stuff? I don't see the value for Sony.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, Microsoft just did this smarter. Because you have a streaming device. It's right here. It's called a phone.
Well, yeah, but they're even available on Steam Deck.
Huh?
Right? You can do them on Steam Deck. You can stream on Steam Deck.
Right, but what I'm saying is
you can stream on that Logitech thing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying though. You can stream on anything.
Yeah.
So Microsoft did the smart thing and just made a phone, and we're like, we're not R&Ding our own console for this, where Sony is doing it the stupidest way possible and making
assuming this is true.
Yeah, I mean, it probably is at this point. So I don't, the dumb way is to make their own thing. I just see, like, if the phone is there and you believe in, if you're only going to make a cloud and remote play thing, both those I can do on my phone already. So why are you going to sell me this? That's what I don't understand.
Like we talked about it, like it gets you off of your phone's battery and it keeps it to where you can respond to people on your phone. Like you don't have to sacrifice your phone's usability to play games. I understand that.
Yeah.
And I see the value there. The problem is like what you're talking about and what we just talked about with PSVR 2. If we're talking about, if you think that PSVR 2 selling 300,000 units in a month is bad, see how well this thing sells day one. If all it is a remote play device that you have to have Wi-Fi in order to use, and there's no way for you to do it with cell data. And there's, even with cell data, you're still probably talking, this thing is probably going to sell less than 300,000 in its first month.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not built for a wide enough audience. Now, that doesn't matter if Sony builds it and R&Ds it knowing that they're going for this niche audience. But then it comes into, why would that even, because like the backbone's $100, isn't it?
Yeah, if this is 150, I'm in. I would buy this. I would buy it just for the convenience of laying in my bed. But
because I'm gonna tell you right now, the backbone is not worth $100. No fucking way.
No shot.
I can't believe it's priced at $100. There's no screen. It doesn't even have the same functionality as my DualSense, which is $70 if I wanted to go buy one right now. How in the hell are you telling me that's $100? What is it doing that is worth $30 more than the official PlayStation controller?
Exactly. I don't know.
At this point, I'd be better off just buying a fucking clip, buying a DualShock and buying a $10 clip that you just put your phone in on top of the controller.
Yeah, I don't understand it.
And then Bluetoothing your controller to your phone, which already works.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the pricing is a big thing here, too. I don't know. I don't get this. My hope is that somehow this report is just way off, and this really is a handheld device that can play PS4 games or something on the go. And I don't know though, because then you run into the same problem that we talk about with the Series S, where if it's about making PS5 games, compatible with it in some degree, this becomes the weak point.
Yeah.
If PS5 games are supposed to all somehow be playable on this device in a native capacity, then I don't know how this works. Interesting thing. Do you remember when Xbox was talking about, for Xbox One, allowing cloud processing to help push a game to process some of it on the cloud side so that you didn't have to do it on the device and it would make up the difference? Do you remember that? Crackdown was supposed to be part of it.
Oh, yes.
So Crackdown 3 was supposed to be one of the examples of having the destruction and stuff around the city be cloud processed. So that
how they kept
you didn't
saying
have to
cloud
worry
streaming
about
tech over and over.
Yeah, so the idea is that you have to be connected online to play the game, but when you are, the cloud is processing all the destruction so that the console itself doesn't have to be strong enough to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So follow me for a second.
I'll try.
Using that ideology, if Sony has done some pretty good stuff to their processing on the cloud side, you could arguably do what the Switch does with that added addition of saying some of the game is playing natively on this handheld.
Okay.
But when it's a PS5 game, like I'll say all PS4 games can run on this in base compatibility mode. So you're only going to be playing it 1080p. We're not going to be doing pro settings or anything like that. But all games can play just in base PS4 compatibility mode. Bam, fine. That's cool. And when you're playing PS5 games, as much as can reasonably be on the handheld will play on the handheld, and then your cloud streaming will activate the rest of it. That way it cuts down on latency because you can know that your controller inputs that are going on and the way the game responds to those can be tied into the same hardware at the same time. Latency's gone. The only thing you have to deal with is the cloud processing on the back for certain things. I'm not saying it's possible, but that's a far more interesting idea.
That I would be interested in. I agree.
But even then, you're probably talking a Vita priced item, $300.
Yeah,
worth it at that point, in my opinion.
Still a lot,
as long as
it's worth
actually
it.
Works.
Exactly, it's just got to be right.
I mean, dude, if Switch sells for $300 and it can't play any of the modern, third party games,
yeah, I don't disagree with you at all.
$250 for a model that's Wi-Fi only, $300 for a model where you've got to go and put a SIM card in it. Vita 2, baby.
It's on AT&T. Boo.
So that was funny. That was funny. All right. Let's move along here. We got one last thing to talk about. Or no, we don't. We have a few
I added one because I forgot it.
It's cool.
It's big news.
Okay, so Alice is dead, as we kind of teased in the cold open. In a blog post on Patreon, American McGee announced that EA has passed on a new entry in the Alice franchise. So for anyone who's been following it, American McGee's Alice, and then American McGee's Alice Madness Returns, which is a PS3 title. Fantastic game. Beloved. Anyone who can play it, find a way to play it. It's great. They've been working on a follow-up to it called Alice Asylum for a few years. They had a Patreon where people were basically paying for the developers to get together, brainstorm, figure out what the game they wanted to make, create a design document so that they could go present it to EA and hopefully EA would approve. Well, that's how far they got. They finally got to where they made the design Bible, talked about how long it should be in production, the type of crew needed, the size needed, figured out a developer to present to EA so that EA could either decide whether they wanted to fund it or pass. And then if they don't want to fund it, if they would be willing to license the IP so they can make a game under a different publisher who would fund it, or sell the IP so that they could make a game under someone else. And this is basically where we are. He gave many reasons why the game will not move forward, with EA not seeing the viability of developing a new title, but also being unwilling to relinquish the license to McGee. So, and apparently he was prepared to develop the title with Virtuous. So this is of course, a studio. Could do it himself. With that denial, it appears that McGee is done with the industry altogether, thus ending an extremely successful career with stops at ID Software, id Software, as some people say, and of course, EA. This is a weird one because I don't understand EA's thought process here. This feels like you brushed on it earlier, Chris. This feels like trying to make Metal Gear Solid, or this feels like having Kojima come to you and go, listen, I have the idea for Metal Gear Solid 6. I'm ready to make it right now. Now, if you don't want to work with me, that's cool. But license the IP to me. You'll make a chunk of money. You won't have to worry about funding development. We can find funding elsewhere. Go on ahead. What I'm getting at here is that when your game is called American McGee's Alice and the IP is intrinsically stuck to one person, and then that person comes to you and goes, hey, we've got a design idea. We're willing to find someone else to pay for the development since you don't want to. All you got to do is just let me use the IP. You retain ownership. You make some money off of an IP that you're otherwise not using and that you won't use without me, because who the hell is going to buy American McGee's Alice blank that American McGee didn't develop or didn't do anything with? It's like saying, well, who really wants to buy Metal Gear Solid that Kojima didn't make? And if Metal Gear Survive taught anyone anything, it's not enough people. So I don't understand it. It sounds like they don't want anything to hurt the IP, but how? What is the value of the IP without American McGee?
I don't know. What's the IP? What's the value of Civilization without Sid Meier? You're asking the same question.
I know. At the end of but
that's what I'm saying. Be like, massive value.
Yeah.
Civilization is still huge.
Civilization is huge, but Alice is a niche IP, always has been. I completely understand them not choosing to fund it. I even understand them not choosing to sell the IP, because the IP in and of itself does have value. If EA ever needed to sell it down the road for some reason, they could hold on to it. It has a value. At what point does it make sense not to go, here's an IP that we've not done anything with in 13 years or 12 years, whatever it be. I want to make a game in it. My name is attached to it. I know I don't own it, but here I am. I guess I just don't understand the thought process. It really annoys me, because it's the kind of stuff from EA where it's like, this is why I've multiple times in the past not really wanted to support them. Because I feel like they make incredibly dumb decisions that impact people who are very beloved in the gaming industry and games that people do love, called classics. And I'm in this weird spot where, like, I don't know if I want to buy Star Wars Jedi Survivor, because I'm like, this is a company that wouldn't let this dude just make a fucking game and let him find someone else to allow him to do it. Like, they allowed the Kingdoms of Amalur IP to go out elsewhere. What the fuck is so important about American McGee's Alice to EA? But Kingdoms of Amalur, like, fuck it. You know?
I mean, Kingdoms of Amalur in a lot of ways is poisoned, for one. Just Kurt Schilling kind of poisoned that whole thing, even though I love him and the game.
Yeah, completely fair.
As a baseball player, I don't follow him outside of that. It's a little cringe. But I don't know. It's one of those things, right? Like, there's a lot of factors. I don't begrudge you boycotting whatever you want. That just means neither of us will buy Jedi Fallen Survivor. But I think the thing is, like, I don't know necessarily, like, why would you hold on to this franchise if he's not going to make games and you're not going to make games? But there is an argument that if you look at it, like, let's say he was going to work with Virtuos. They've never made a game, as far as I can tell. You know, and his last game, I'm looking at their website. It's all additive work. You know, I think it was their tagline is, building blockbuster games with you. Like, it's not, you know, they don't do that. So it could have been that could have been the whole linchpin. Like, you should have come to us with somewhat a better team than this. Like, I would be willing to bet that if he was like, listen, I talked to Sony and they're going to hire me to work at Sucker Punch and we're going to make an Alice game and they'll give you 30% for the licensing fee, I'm positive they would have said yes. You know? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I get where you're coming from, but the reality is that Alice has never really been a big seller. It's been a darling, but it's never been a critical darling.
Oh, 100%.
Madness Returns got, like, at highest, like, a 7. Great game.
Yeah.
Great game. I love
But
that game. It's a game that no one else would make, but it was never a critical darling. It was never particularly a sales darling. It was one of those weird game examples where people could be like, look at EA doing something different for them and making games that are more art house driven and doing something that's not just trying to nickel dime you. And that's, I guess, the value that Alice is for them, as it's an example of an IP that they can try and dip into the well to go, see, this is, we don't always just, that's the value of like It Takes Two and the EA originals is like, see, the guy who said fuck the Oscars, we keep letting him make games that we pay for. And it's like the only value that they have is both of those games did well, actually, A Way Out and It Takes Two, but they did well enough, right? But the point being is they keep that around because it's just a way for EA to be like, hey, this is PR. This is, look, EA can make games that aren't just Battlefield. EA can make games that aren't just this. I mean, that's the value of it, to make them look better. But I get your point. But like, even when you're doing something like this, I mean, Spicy Horse, which is who made Alice Madness Returns, they pretty much made only iPhone games up until the point of Madness Returns. And it was American McGee's development studio. But that's about it. He made American McGee's Grimm for Windows with that studio. And then everything else was just iPad until Madness Returns. And then after that, it was a mobile Facebook game that never came out. Actually, that was their last game that actually released. And they've been defunct since 2016. So point being is that, yeah, I get what you're saying, but every Alice game has been made by a no-name studio. It's just had American McGee attached to it, and he was directing it. So it's like the value is an American McGee overseeing the project.
Look, the reality is I don't have much opinion on this. I just knew you would want to talk about it.
Yeah.
I'm
sad, man.
I see both sides. You know, I'm not surprised that EA doesn't want to do it, and I'm not surprised that he's mad. You know, both sides. I personally don't see this as a reason to boycott like Jedi Fallen Survivor or anything like that, like you were saying. But I boycotted Nier Automata over trophies.
How much do I care?
I'm not.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, to me, it feels like he should have known this game was dead. It's been what, 12 years? How long since that last game?
Well, he didn't start working on Asylum until like 2019 or something like that.
Yeah, but that's just more to my point. Is the franchise?
You're
is
saying
dead.
that the franchise is dead. Yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah,
but that's what he's saying. Like, he had an idea. He, instead of having EA pay him to be like, or having to worry about anything else, he went to the fans and was like, if you can find a way to fund us, we'll make a design document to take to somebody and get it to pay. Like, I get it. Again, the problem here is EA just basically saying, the franchise is really important to us, so you can't have it or do anything with it, but it's not important enough to us for us to make a new game.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not, again, I don't argue that that's weird, but I also know that Sony Sony has done this with like Days Gone. They're not going to make it Days Gone 2. They could have sold it to CD Projekt Red and didn't, and you know. Are we mad about that? I'm mad about it.
I get that. Oh, of course. But I think the big difference here is, in looking at this, is like, that's why I liken it to Kojima on a much smaller level, is that American McGee has a following and his name is attached to it. And the only value that the IP has is with American McGee attached to it. It's why it's called American McGee's Alice.
Yeah. Nothing you're saying.
There'd be zero reason. So at some point, I feel like it doesn't make any sense for EA to completely shut down the conversation. I mean, at least go through and say, hey, if you can get people to, find someone to fund it and we can discuss how much our licensing percentage will be for the thing of the game, we'll see. Instead, they just immediately go no. I just think it's a very interesting way to go. It sucks.
Listen, I'm not calling anyone out. I have no horse in this race, but how do you know they didn't do that? And he just went, we can't. So he gave up. We don't know that either. It's very possible that even if they came back with something you, me, and everyone else who follows this industry knows is impossible. But they went to him and were like, if you can get FromSoft, we'll give you the license. Right? Maybe. But we don't know that there were no more options. We just know that American McGee gave up. And I'm not saying that in a pejorative way, but he did. So
no, I get you.
There you go. That's all.
But if you read the Patreon post, it's definitely, and then let's be my last thing. It definitely is. I was given no more options. Like I couldn't license it. They basically said no to allowing me to license or sell it to us. So it doesn't even matter if I found someone else to make it. They don't want to license it. Therefore, we're dead in the water. Because that's what he said. Like if there were still options, he'd continue. But since there's not, and this game is truly at a point where there's no way to move forward, you have nothing else to do than just go, okay, well, I guess we gave it a good try. And that sucks. I mean, there's no guarantee the game would have been good. It's just, it's one of those things that annoys me because EA will bounce back and forth between doing things that annoy the shit out of me. And then also doing something kind of cool. Dead Space Remake, awesome. The newest Need for Speed, I was trepidatious on it. Ended up being great. And then we go to this. And then we go to the fact that they're just returning to the Mass Effect and Dragon Age well. And BioWare probably is not going to be anything close to the developer they once were. I wouldn't even be surprised if BioWare closes soon. We'll definitely see. But point being, EA constantly goes back and forth between this shit with me. And they've been doing it my entire gaming life, and I hate it. I'm sick of it.
Bullying me, EA.
All right, look, footage of multiple unannounced Sega titles is leaked into the wild. The footage, which showed multiple games, including the previously announced Jet Set Radio remake, also shown were Persona 3 Remake and Sonic Frontiers. All the footage had in development tag in the corner, and it seems the footage is from 2021, which would explain the inclusion of Frontiers. Rumors have swirled around for the remake of Persona 3 for years, so while unconfirmed, the rumor does seem to have some backing there. And if you saw it, I mean, yeah, it definitely looked like remake level stuff. It pretty good looking.
Yeah, look great.
I'm no huge Persona fan, but it does look good. So
yeah,
this would be interesting. I'm sure a lot of people would love this.
Yeah, I can't wait. I just know that I don't have too much to say. I hope Jet Set Radio does come out, and I hope it's good. And I hope the soundtrack is half as good as Jet Set Radio.
See, do you think it's a remake or a reimagining?
I didn't mean remake. It's probably a reimagining. Although you see like the guys like Yo-Yo's in that video and stuff like that. So
do you think games like Hi-Fi Rush coming out and at least seemingly garnering a lot of positive critical attention bodes well for games like Jet Set Radio that have a stylistic curve to them? I think so. Dude, too.
I played Hi-Fi Rush and I was like, I wish this was a Jet Set game. So
yeah.
Do it. Give me
this is
Jet
curious.
Set Radio Future. Just give me that game again.
Great game.
I want to hear Birthday Cake again. That song,
dude,
fucking slaps.
I miss Xbox One era Microsoft. They did a lot of crazy shit, and somehow that made another Jet Set Radio happen. That made Phantom Dust happen. Microsoft in that day were wild, and now it's not quite happening that way.
Yeah,
but that's okay. I mean, Microsoft are fine. It's just it doesn't feel like they're pulling crazy stuff out of their ass as much as they used to.
No,
I'll give them a little
Blue
bit of
Dragon
credit though, because what was it? Pentiment is a good example of like even though I'm pretty sure that game was 100% in development separate from Xbox. The fact that Xbox was attached to it is kind of like, that's an odd game to be a first-party studios game. This is interesting.
Yeah. Good for y'all.
Yeah.
Make another game.
Whether or not they actually greenlit it or not, I guess at bare minimum they didn't cancel it.
Everything I read from Josh Sawyer was that the game never would have been made without Game Pass. So take that for what you will.
Yeah, curious. All right, we got one piece of news, and this is where Chris is going to take over. But a veteran of the Halo franchise, Joseph Staten, is leaving Microsoft as a whole. Staten worked from Bungie when they were acquired in 2000. He was a writer and cinematic director on Halo 1 and 2 and continued writing for Halo 3 and Reach, while also consulting on Halo Wars. After Bungie split with Xbox, Staten, whatever it is, was a director and writer on ODST and then filled the same role on Destiny. Finally, in 2014, he returned to Microsoft and worked on the publishing side, filling in the creative director role. He did this until returning to Halo and 343 to try and right the ship of the fledgling Halo Infinite. This has come to an end, coinciding with layoffs at the studio. Staten has parted ways with Microsoft and is moving forward to a new adventure. So something to note here that's important. he left 343 in like January and went back into the publishing part of Microsoft, and he's been there for about 2 months before now leaving.
Yes.
So he's not leaving as part of 343, but it's still happening all around a very quick bubble.
Yes, very true.
So, Chris, you had an idea here. What is the topic that you view as pertaining with all of this?
I was listening to stuff about this, and I was having a thought. And this is the reason I put Xbox news in here. Because I think the very clear thing that should be happening at Sony headquarters is handing that man a blank check.
So why do you think that? Just so I can follow your thought process.
Because he was part of two of the biggest franchises in video game history. And Sony is at a point right now where in 10 years they might need a Call of Duty killer. And who better to run a studio to make that Call of Duty killer for you than the guy who made Halo? Or, quite frankly, he might just go back to Bungie. You know, both of those things I think are true. But if it's me, I'm pulling out my checkbook and I'm like, you fill in the numbers and make us a franchise. And that was my thought on the whole topic, is just, this seems like a very obvious move here, especially if they want to be petty with all of the Activision stuff. Like, yeah, we hired your boy. We gave him $100 million to open the studio. Not counting what we're going to do in ads and stuff.
I see where you're coming from. Mm-hmm. And I even get the idea. And that's kind of what I was thinking, is that this all comes off the impetus of potentially needing an answer to Call of Duty. And I find great irony in the potential solution to that in this scenario being that Sony, to create the Call of Duty killer, goes to Halo, a series that they were once trying to create the killer for.
Yeah.
To be the antidote for Call of Duty in the future, should they worry about Call of Duty's popularity waning on PlayStation or being pulled entirely from PlayStation.
Right. So
here's my curiosity, though.
Mm-hmm.
Even at its absolute largest, Halo's popularity doesn't even scratch Call of Duty.
No,
for just
but
being
that's
dead honest.
But
there's still value. It's one of the closest outside of Battlefield. It's one of the closest shooter franchises to Call of Duty.
Yeah, but
success. And cultural prevalence. And
you can't. I don't think that can really be part of the conversation, though. I think you're correct, because I think Jim Ryan's right. Like, you can't beat Call of Duty. The only way Call of Duty is going to go down is if Call of Duty beats itself. Right? 4 or 5 games in a row. What do you mean? If 4 or 5 games if the next 4 games from Activision of Call of Duty are garbage, that's when the franchise might go down. And yes, we've had years where, oh, I don't like it this much. I don't like it as much as last year, or this one's not very good, or Infinite Warfare comes out. And yeah, don't say it. I know you like the campaign. Those types of years all coming in a row is what's going to end up being what causes the waning in popularity of Call of Duty. You know, Sony can't make a game that will ever be that big. Nobody can. And at least they can't right now. This would have to be in 15 years. This game has now reached numbers in the Sony ecosystem that equate to something akin to Call of Duty. But just on the fact that it would probably be exclusive means that it'll never be as big as Call of Duty unless they're smart and just go, fuck it, it's on everything. Fuck it. You took Call of Duty, that's fine.
It's really the only way you can reach that, right? That milestone only comes with the aspect of saying, hey, Call of Duty's ability to become a cultural milestone within gaming to a level higher than Halo is based almost entirely on the back of the fact that it's available on as many things that can really play it in a good way.
Yeah. Like, to me, ironically, this was
like
not even
Fortnite could have never been that big without phones and stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Even if they were, Sony has enough of a lead that they could release on everything. They could release on mobile, Switch, PC, and PlayStation, and totally skip Xbox, and it would rival Call of Duty. So, ironically, not necessarily the topic I had in mind, but I think they have two moves. If it was me, again, we're just hypothesizing on random people's lives, but I would look at them and be like, "We'll give you a blank check, or you can open Bungie Myrtle Beach and you can make games there, and it'll be you went back to Bungie, but you're making our next big shooter. It's a multiplayer shooter like Halo. It doesn't have to be sci-fi. Just make a game. We're putting it out. It'll go on everything because it's a Bungie product, but you're the guy." So that was the long-winded way to lead into the conversation I was interested in having. Outside of Joseph Staten, right? If you could pluck one person out of the games industry and hand them a blank check to make you a game, who is it?
Man, that's rough. So this is saying on a personal level, or are we talking about if we were Sony?
Let's go with both.
So the thing about Sony is I think that they kind of already did that once with Kojima. Quite literally. I think that when Kojima, they saw the opportunity, and Kojima's culturally relevant throughout the entirety of gaming in a way where even if you've never played his game, you've heard his name and have a rough idea of who he is.
Absolutely.
Which is not common in the games industry. It's not. There's a few people that people know to that level. Cliff Bleszinski kind of gets there,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, John, what's his name?
Carmack.
Old dude from id Software. Carmack, yeah. And even then, it's like maybe Miyamoto. So like people from Nintendo, maybe you have a few handful, but that's not, by and large, it's not normal in the gaming industry that people know creators by their names.
No.
So I think that they've already done that once. I think the funny thing about Joseph Staten is I don't think most people know this name separate from this piece of news.
Probably
Do you
not.
get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so it gets really hard because if you want to look and say like who has good ideas and who seems to always push something through in a good quality product, I think Sony has a lot of that already in their thing, right? I think that part of Sony's ability to be so nimble is to say, hey, we look at people who do a really good job at producing or overseeing a bunch of games or one game, and then we make sure we put them in a position to exceed and do that. I think they've been doing that with Herman Holst. That's why they moved him into where they did. I think that was part of, they have, what can't I think of his name right now?
Neil Druckmann?
No, Neil Druckmann's also clearly, he's got a lot of successes tied to him. Scott Rhodey is who I was thinking of. He oversees at a higher level and looks at games and gives ideas and feedback, and he's good at that. And I think that they already had that with a lot of their studio heads. I don't know if you remember Shannon Sudstill, who was that. She was at Santa Monica. She was the studio director, the head of the studio. And Santa Monica has almost consistently put out absolute bangers. The only time that they've kind of missed was God of War Ascension. And that's hardly enough to just be like, oh, it's not worth it. So I don't know if you remember, she moved on to Stadia, and then Stadia closed. So I don't even know where she's at right now. But Sony have been really good about finding people who do good at managing people, less so games. And I think that there's a big conversation to be had about the value of managing people, because a lot of creative people can come up with interesting ideas for games. Mm-hmm. But if you do not have the people who know how to manage the people who are going to make that game, then you don't have much value at all. And I use that as an example of, we look at how things fell apart with Scalebound on Microsoft's side. And what happened, of course, I'm not saying it's all Microsoft, but it's part Microsoft and part Platinum Games. And then you look at all these other games that Microsoft was doing that fell apart, that they had deals with and that have been canceled or taken too long. And Halo Infinite took forever and did this different thing. And I think that the smartest thing Sony could do is find the people who are nameless, that most people don't know their name, who do a good job at managing people, putting them over a group of people who are competent at what they do, and then release multiple games that are successful and well produced and well made on a relatively quick schedule. Because if you look at the competition, that is what Microsoft can't seem to do. Yeah. It's all the people that people don't normally know by name. Like, yeah, people know Scott Rhodey and Shuhei and whatnot, but not like Kojima.
True.
Not like Cliff Bleszinski. That's not the value. So I wouldn't even be able to name the person. It's someone that you've never heard of is the person. Someone you've never heard of is who they need to open that checkbook to and say, come here, look at what we have going on, either go to one studio or be ahead of a certain number of studios and make sure that we get these things out of the door with acclaimed gameplay and story and characters and iconic IP and get them out in a way that reviews well, sells well. Bam. That is the value of that. If I had to go towards one person, I don't think there's very many people on the left who are in the industry that really are auteurs.
Mm-hmm. I think that's
because the only person that I can think of right now is Cliff Bleszinski. And the last time that he was tied to something, it was Lawbreakers. And that was a humongous flop in terms of how much marketing was put behind it. And then it just completely faltered. I'd like to see him do that. I'd like to see him come back and be given a reasonable amount of money to make a reasonable game, but I don't know what that is anymore. So if anything, Sony should take money and how do you do that? How do you invest in auteurs? And how do you invest in getting people to become auteurs over time? You know what I mean?
Well, that I think you have to go to the person who was under Druckmann and Straley, right? You want a new Uncharted like franchise, you go to whoever was a producer that wasn't named Neil or Bruce or Amy. You know what I mean? You go to that person. You go to the guy who's sitting next to Neil but not talking in meetings. You do you know what I mean? Like you go to the dude that they trust, but you don't know why. And you're like, clearly there's something about you. Here's $10 million, open a studio, hire people, and then pitch us a game.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Because like that, it's about being a visionary and about being able to come up with something that has an idea and a through line and that is distinct, and as you can see it and go, this feels like. The thing about Kojima is that you see a Kojima game and you go, yeah, this is Kojima. Like it exudes Kojima in every aspect, the way it looks, the way it feels, the way that the story is being presented, the mistake. Like that's just how his games play, and that works. What? And arguably, we just talked about one, American McGee is a much smaller scale of that, but those don't exist in a large quantity in the games industry because of John Garvin from Bend, well, previously of Bend, now of Lithos. He talked about that, about how games have been so much more. We talked about this a little bit on the podcast, but how games have strayed from putting one person's name as the John Garvin's Days Gone. Like they don't push games that way. Very seldom does that happen. So it means that creating things like that, you have to have just the right type of person, like somebody who's quirky and weird, like American McGee, or who's really passionate in a crazy way, like Kojima, and then they get big, or someone who just has a big personality, like Cliffy B. But that's how that happens, and then I guess time. But I don't know. It feels like Japan has had more of those than anyone, because people talk about like. Miyamoto, of course. You have From Software guy. I'm skipping right now.
Miyazaki,
and then you have which in gaming, yes, but yeah, Miyazaki. You have Shinji Mikami. Those things exist.
Keiji Inafune,
and I feel like that's probably like that's like maybe the closest that you get to it. It feels like Japan has had far more of those than anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an issue of the games industry is very concerned with credit, which is not unfair, but it prevents us from having auteurs, right? Because if everyone is responsible for a Kojima game, it sounds pretty shitty when it says Chapter 1, written by Hideo Kojima, designed by Hideo Kojima, acted by Hideo Kojima. Like, that's not great, but it does provide something that you know, like there are people out there who have a top 100 list of movie directors, right? I'm sure if I asked Blake for 100 movie directors, he'd give them to me. And that
name 100 game directors. Name 10 game directors right now. I could actually do this one.
I think I might be able to do that.
But it is a lot harder.
It is harder. And we only know that because we pay attention to the news.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Whereas you can go to almost anyone and say, hey, what's the movie directors you like? And even some normal guy would be like,
Spielberg,
Zack Snyder, Spielberg. There's names that you become accustomed to because of the way that movies. Well, it was because of the way movies are marketed. They're marketed off the backs of their directors, even if the director is not entirely responsible for how it comes together.
Yeah, and I've maintained that that's a problem for the games industry. But so my answer is Sven Vinke.
Okay, who's that?
He's the creative director of Baldur's Gate 3 and the founder of Larian Studios. So if I can't buy Larian, I'm buying him. And I'm having him build a studio. And I'm telling him, see, you'll like this because I have a great idea for a pitch for his game. He's going to make a top-down choice-based RPG, but he's going to make it, I think I'm excited about this myself. He's going to take I think it's the evil ending of Infamous and set the game 1,000 years after that.
Of Infamous 2?
Yes.
Okay.
So the world is a post-apocalyptic game because evil and good factions of conduits have risen, and you play a new conduit. And it's a fully immersive RPG set in the Infamous universe 1,000 years after Cole McGrath. And everyone's
it's an interesting idea because in that ending, conduits are the only ones that can survive because they're the only ones that can endure the sickness.
Yeah, exactly. So everyone's a conduit, and it would be even more interesting. Oh man, see now I got like good ideas of like how interesting it would be if like because everyone is conduits, there's still that small chance of a regular person. And it happens, and that person becomes worshipped for not being a conduit because he's the only different person. You know, he's a little almost like Caesar in New Vegas. Like that's him. You know.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
I think that would be cool as hell. See, I like the idea. I'm hyped on it. Yeah. It'll never happen, but.
Yeah, it's like that question starts to feel more like you've just got to go to a studio and say, here's a check to make whatever game you want. It's kind of, it seems like that's the answer more so than one person and tell them to pick up and then build a studio. Like it definitely can happen. Like, I mean, Jade Raymond is a clear example of someone who is known throughout the industry for having successful studios and successful games. Even if she's not released anything of value in a decade. I guess that's what happens when you're sought after. People spend a lot of money and then give up on everything about what they hired you on for.
Her and Amy Hennig have the same problem.
No joke. I feel terrible for Amy Hennig because she gets hired. People are like, we've got Amy. Fuck you, Amy. Sorry.
Anyway, I don't know. I thought it was an interesting conversation. I should have been less surprised.
Well, no, thinking about the Halo, thinking about the Call of Duty killer is a big thing, though.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that there's a lot of question of Sony spent so much time and energy and made amazing games that I love to death trying to create the Halo killer, and they never succeeded and they never really hit the levels of success they needed. With Sony finally finding studios and series that are hitting 20 million plus units sold, do we really want them to overly invest and back into trying to create a killer of something and then underperforming? What's the impact of that on the studios behind them? What's the impact of that on creating IP that just becomes dormant once it doesn't, perform to a certain level?
I think it's always better to try, right? Would you be happier if the order didn't exist?
No.
Exactly.
I'm glad that they tried on the order and made it, even if I get to live in a world where it doesn't get to go forward. I mean, I'm sure that's how people feel about like Killzone and Resistance. I know I feel like those games at least got multiple tries. And I mean, listen, like,
point being, who better to make a new Resistance than the guy who made Halo, or who's part of the creation of Halo, since Resistance is just Halo without Master Chief anyway.
That is blasphemous. You have never said words so fucking blasphemous. Holy shit.
Listen.
Those series are nothing alike.
They're a little alike. They're a little alike.
My guy. Big
strong man fighting space aliens who've invaded.
This is going back. Everything can be boiled down. It's a shooter game with aliens.
So what you're saying is my original hypothesis is correct.
That's what you're saying. You're following your own original hypothesis. They're the same.
There you go. I'm not saying they're the same. I'm saying that they're close enough that it wouldn't be much of a departure to tell a Resistance story and a Halo story. I don't mean any offense. Sorry.
You may not have meant it, but you highly offended a lot of people just now.
Is it better if I say Killzone is almost like Halo? Because Killzone is also kind of like Halo.
No, Killzone's like
Killzone is if Call of Duty was what took place in Halo's setting. That's Killzone.
I'm still going to stick with Killzone is just Wolfenstein in space.
That okay, I'll take that too. I'll accept that answer.
Yeah. I mean, the Hellgast are just, So
what you're saying is it's Castlevania, but in space.
Sure.
Yeah, hell yeah. They're all the same. They're third-person games. And yes, I realize
Killzone's not even third person.
Killzone is not third person. I realize.
They have one. Killzone Liberation. That's like Castlevania.
Okay, let's go.
All right, listen, we got questions we're going to run through real quick. All right. Matthew Green, patron. These are questions we are thankful that you guys had reached out to us and gave us to answer that we couldn't fit into the main episode. They didn't fit in anywhere nicely. So we finish them up at the end of the episode. Matthew Green, one of our patrons for a long time, he says, have you or Chris made any of the suggested food items from the other month? Ooh, Chris, have you made any of the things that you that we titillated about back when we were talking about all that good food? You're a chef, so arguably you have a much higher chance having made any of this.
I haven't made anything yet, but we are doing for Cinco de Mayo, we're doing mole tossed wings. So that's kind of what I said.
I mean, okay. No, I haven't. I'm going to be honest with you. I move and I don't know how to slow down. So 90% of the time, I'm either eating the same thing that I always eat at my house, or I'm eating the same thing that I always eat at another restaurant. I hardly ever cook, to be honest with you. And I was getting into cooking when my grill was working, and then my smoker, as it is, the auger won't turn. So it kind of deflated my interest because I got it and had it for like 3 months, and now it's fucking up, and I've spent hours trying to work on it and fix it, and I just can't get it to work right. I haven't really cooked much. I need to get back into it because there's a real value in cooking your own food.
Well, here's what
you're doing, like actually working through the process.
Here's what we'll do. Episode 400, 450. We'll see how schedules work out, right? I'll come down there and the whole episode will be cooking with Triangle Squared. So we'll talk about the news while I teach you how to cook.
Your schedule in 3 years? I'd be very curious to see what your schedule's like in 3 years from now.
My schedule will probably be different in a couple of weeks anyway. We'll see.
Well, look, maybe 350.
Yeah, 350 works.
Just a year.
Still got another week of vacation time.
Look, we can make this happen. Episode 312, Cooking with Triangles.
Episode 343, we're making alien stuff.
Damn, that's actually, dude, an Xbox podcast that hits episode 343 is actually that's pretty cool.
It would be pretty
You could
sweet.
do a lot of fun stuff there.
And then that's where the podcast collapses.
A Star Wars podcast hits episode 66 and they kill all the kids.
He just shoots his co-host. I don't know if I know what I must do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it.
That would actually be a really fun like shtick to have. It's like midway through the thing. It's like execute order 66.
It's a 30-second episode of just both the hosts being killed.
We've got him.
Oh,
man,
God. We'll do some cooking.
Yeah, that's what we should do. We should definitely find a way for you to come down here so we can actually just live stream it and have everything set up. Yeah, this studio is big enough. We can set up some stuff. It'd be really fun to actually make this look like a kitchen. Like, put a cabinet top in here and like some mixing bowls.
That would
because it definitely would need to be counter height at the least. This is just table height.
And then we just make mozzarella sticks.
That's what she said. we make the 256 mozzarella sticks. I mean, that would be impressive.
It would be pretty sweet. We would be full, and we'd have the farts. Holy Christ.
All right, Chris. So what do you think here? Gamers Gamma asks, how often do you guys even play DLC? I feel like it's very common for people to have already moved on. The exceptions for me would be Ghost of Tsushima and probably the upcoming Forbidden West DLC, but who knows? I might not even get to that one. So, Chris, longtime listeners already know I am woefully terrible at playing DLC. I hardly ever play it. The only time I seem to play it is when I don't play a game until all the DLC's out, and I play the DLC at the same time as playing the game. I don't really. I can't think of anything I've seen where you're big on DLC, but maybe I just haven't seen the right game for you.
I think I could probably name off the top of my head all the DLC I've played in my life. And this is assuming we're not counting like Call of Duty map packs. But I don't play DLC very often. I'm very much like a show me the base game. That's what I care about. I don't even go on PC and mod Skyrim, right? Like, so I don't engage in anything that really changes the game. I think I played some of the New Vegas DLC. I played all the Fallout 3 DLC. I played all the Fallout 4 DLC. But that's all I can think of. I buy a lot of DLC because I tend to buy like you get it 3 days early, so you get the season pass, and I don't play the season pass. You know? Yeah,
that's true. You get a lot of DLC that you just don't end up touching because you have all the stuff that's the season pass for Callisto Protocol.
I do. Holy shit, I do. Okay. Is it weird that I'm considering getting the PS4 Platinum?
I mean, yeah, a little bit.
Because it's just easy. Not because I want to.
I mean, do your business, man. It's not. I'm not on me.
I am going to play Guardians of the Galaxy again and get the Platinum on PS4, but that's it.
I'm trying to think through. So I've played Dishonored. I played the Knife of Dunwall, the Brigmore Witches, and I think that was it. Those are the two for that one. And I played them at the same time as I played Dishonored. Like I beat Dishonored immediately, went to both of those. What was interesting about that is that was the first time that I beat Dishonored, and I was like, holy shit, this game is amazing. Let me play this DLC. I played the Shivering Isles for Oblivion. I played arguably its DLC, even though it's not really. Because, I mean, you could consider Infamous 2, Festival of Blood, and Infamous First Light as examples, but they're both standalone DLC. So I don't know that I guess, I don't know. DLC is weird when it requires the base game. Because I've normally moved on, and back in the day I was so poor I used to sell it, so I wouldn't normally keep it. So there's a lot of DLC I've missed.
Yeah, I'm not a DLC guy. Like Burial at Sea, I played.
I didn't play any of the BioShock Infinite DLC. I love that game. It's a great game.
Just the Minerva's Den. Was it Minerva's Den? The good one something for like 2? That one. The good one for BioShock 2.
Again, I know of the DLC. Played very little of it. So what would you say? Because he's talking about he feels like most people have moved on, and I would definitely say that's what it is for me. Even if it's not about a platinum, like when I platinum a game and then it gets DLC that requires the base game, it's even harder. It's like I'm done with that game. But even games I don't platinum, there's just a sense of like, yeah, I moved on. I'm good. I don't really feel like playing that.
That's why I don't play it.
I think it's that DLC always feels like, well, it's not main game content. Like it's not. there's still going to be a Dishonored 2.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like Dishonored 2 will have a higher, more impactful story than the Dishonored series. Now, I played the Dishonored, and the DLC for Dishonored was actually fucking great, really good. So I'm really disproving my own theory here. But I feel like most of the time, DLC doesn't get much of a mention. What's weird about that is that DLC has still remained so prevalent in the industry, so it's got to be doing well enough to justify wanting to do it. But I think that comes from the fact that DLC is usually built off of the exact same engine and most of the time the same assets for the most part. So it's really quick to develop and get out of the door, and you can put a $20 to $30 price tag on it and make a third or if not half of what people paid for the game on the DLC off of significantly less work. So I think that's, even if only 1 million of, like, say your game sells 20 million copies and only 1 million people buy the DLC, that's 1 million people who bought a DLC that you did significantly less work for. So I have to imagine that's why it's there.
Yeah, it's the same thing as microtransactions. It's just to get you another
return on
sale.
Investment.
Whether it works or not is another thing.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I know, look, this is, if you are a big DLC person, you play them, don't throw at me The Witcher. The only reason I say that is I know The Witcher DLC is considered big, and I'm going out of my way to try and play the Cyberpunk DLC this year. I will play it. I'm going to make a amends to it. But what point being, throw out some beloved DLC that I may not have played, and I'll look and see and tell me the ones that you feel like I'm actually missing something by not having played, and I may see if I can knock that out this year. That'd be an interesting thing to do. So yeah, not big on DLC. I'm not surprised that neither of us are, but it doesn't seem like a lot of our listener base really has ever been either. So I do think it's a very niche part of the industry, it seems. But there's money to be made, it would appear.
Oh, you know what? I played Infamous First Light.
Yeah, First Light was great. So was Festival of Blood. Festival of Blood's so fun.
It is good. Last of Us Left Behind. So I have played more DLC than I thought, but
I didn't play Left Behind until the remake.
Oh, okay. So, well, it's still DLC.
But I did play it. I did play it. Yeah. So, but I had to play it as soon as I got done with the campaign. Otherwise, I would have never come back to it. I know myself.
100%. That
100%. B-Raj88, another one of our patrons, he says, your house is on fire. Okay. All of your family, including pets, are out and safe. So you're in the clear, Chris.
Perfect.
You can grab one game from your collection. You have enough time to grab one game in a weird world where you have only 2 fingers. So you can only, and they're very weak, so you can only grip one game. Your hands are full of other stuff for some reason, and you have enough room to just slide 2 fingers down, pick up a game. Which game from your collection would you grab and carry out with you?
Dude, I don't know. That's such a wild question because do I take the game that's worth the most or the game that I like the most?
I would argue that you take the one that you'd want to still be able to play, but at the same time, the argument of taking the one that's worth the most is that you could sell it and then buy back the ones that you lost.
Right. Because like Asura's Wrath I have, that's like a $60 game. Ugh. Jesus. You know what? I would probably take, maybe a weird pick. I would probably take Deadpool.
Really?
No.
Okay.
No.
We just smacked your
Sorry to the listeners. I'm looking at my my shelf. Yeah, this is a hard question for me. I guess I'm going to take the PS3 game I like the most. So I will take Alpha Protocol because it is relatively high priced and I love that game. But that answer would change at any given moment. I might get to that point and be like, oh, Trails of Zilal is like an $80 game. I got to take this.
I would grab the seminal Free Radical Ubisoft developed Haze.
Wow.
I'm kidding. I just happened to have this from when I went and bought it. So, last week I talked about wanting to buy it and try it and play it on my own. And I did. I did go do that. So I haven't played it yet, but I have it. It's here in my hands. We'll see if it dies in my arms or not. I would probably, for a long time, it would have been Nier because just a relatively hard game to come by, the original Nier for PS3. But now that they've made the new version, it's not as big of a deal. So I think Drakengard 3 might be the game I take with me.
Dude, that game shot up in price.
Drakengard 3 did?
Yeah.
Wouldn't
I got it for
surprise me.
24. It's at like 40 now.
Not bad. Short print game that didn't. I mean, it's a cult classic. Great game. Not super easy to come by. Definitely not in a case. And mine's the original day I bought it. Never get rid of it. I will never get rid of Nier. So yeah, I think that'd be it. It's an awesome game. Great. Same series as Nier, more or less. Just an offshoot of it. But it didn't get as much love, and it doesn't seem like it's going to get the remaster treatment. So it's a game that I like to just pop back into because Zero is such a crazy character, and the story and characters are all wild. That's what makes the Drakengard game so fun. Nier also has great games and great stories, but something about the Drakengard world in particular, it's like the characters are so depraved and weird that it's very intriguing to play through. If you've not played Drakengard 3, Chris, you should. It's a pretty wild story.
All right. I'll do it. I own it, so I'll play it. I found one on eBay that's $180, and it is signed by Christina Venezuela and Lauren Landa.
I don't know who that. Maybe the voice actors. I don't actually know.
They must have something to do with it, or it's just a weird place to get a signature.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. But of course, B-Rods, that makes me ask you, now that you are in the big world of collecting physical games, definitely some of the older ones, what would be the game that would jump up and jump to you? There's a strong argument for Rock Band 4, and by the way, because Rock Band 4 is actually really expensive for some reason.
Yeah, but if you could only grab one game, you wouldn't be able to grab the controllers.
The instruments, yeah. You're right. But so yeah,
unless as you're rescuing your family, you're putting a Rock Band controller in their hands and throwing them out the door.
I have one more game that might be on the list, and it's just because I've owned it for so long that I'd feel kind of bad. My Dreamcast, I have owned, and it's a pretty niche game that most people don't know about. It's a Gundam game for Dreamcast called, what is it, 0079 Rise from the Ashes. Gundam Side Story 0079 Rise from the Ashes. It was the first game that blew my little kid mind because you could play from the cockpit view of the Gundam, and I thought that shit was wild because on Dreamcast it was like, I've never seen this. So me and my brother were like flipping shit when we got this game. My dad rented it from Blockbuster, and then we were like, we got to have this. So I've owned this game in its original case since 1999. So part of me would want to go for that too, because it's a classic. It's like it's lived with me almost as long as I've been alive. It's like my plushie from when I was 6. It's like, it's my homeboy. Speaking of plushies from when I'm 6, you best believe right now that if a house fire came on, hold on. My boy Talking Bubba's coming with me. I just want everyone to know, if you're watching on video, my daughter put some pants on him after she broke him. He used to, up until about 3 years ago, he still talked and did all his crazy shenanigans. This is my Talking Bubba from when I was like 3, 2.
Oh my.
I was really young. And sadly, I don't know what my daughter did, but he doesn't talk anymore. But he's still my homie, and
so he's just Bubba now.
He's he's just Bubba. He's mute Bubba. He's silent Bubba. He's Silent Bob's cousin. Yeah, so if you see him outside of the Quick Stop, you might be able to get a little from him. You know what I mean? So yeah, Talking Bubba's my homie. It's like a sentimental value. So that would be my, like 0079 would be like that. Talking Bubba, 0079 Gundam. They've been with me for a long time.
I like that. Sentimental value. Always good.
Yeah. Okay, we got one more question.
Oh.
You ready, Chris?
I'm ready.
Because I think it's time to get a little sexy.
Ooh, hoo, hoo.
You ready for it?
Oh, I'm ready.
Velvet's Corner. Oh, yeah. Velvet Thunder comes with an interesting question. So He's basically started to become a story writer, and every question is continuing the plot forward.
I like it.
So he says the tour around Haven Studios that Brett requested, and just for clarification, I'm pretty sure that was Chris, though I said I would agree that's a good answer.
It was.
Revealed an amazing coincidence. Jade Raymond is making a game based on the Triangle Squared podcast with Brett and Chris as the main characters. She asked for help with finalizing some of the details of the game. She needs to know what powers Brett and Chris will each have, and who is the hero and who is the sidekick. Which podcast listener will be the villain of the game, and what will their powers be, and where will the game be set? So, Velvet, you may think that we were unprepared for this, but one night of crazy ideas of feeding in prompts to ChatGPT after podcasting one day, I came up with the greatest idea of having it be, we told ChatGPT to write us a prompt where Triangle Squared Podcast makes basically a movie or a story that is inspired basically like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, to where we travel around to different gaming worlds and gather around different heroes and heroines from games that we love and adore, and have them help us fight off an evil. So most of this is kind of already, because of that, we have some setup. I love that idea. So in this situation, Chris, I think the first thing we have to say.
Yeah.
Hero, sidekick, I'm going to say that we go into Bill and Ted. So the real question here is not who's the hero, who's the sidekick. Which one of us is Bill and which one of us is Ted?
I mean, you're clearly Bill.
Okay, you think I'm Bill?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would give you top billing.
Okay. And why am I Bill?
Oh, you're the host.
Okay. So you think Keanu's Ted in this situation is like the tag-along?
I've never seen that movie. So I'm.
Oh my God! What?
I just said Bill because it was his first name. It was the first name in the title.
Okay, I got you. Man, I can't believe you've never seen this movie. This makes this way more. So when we were going through that and I was explaining to you the Bill and Ted plot, I don't know why in my mind you knew what it was.
No, I just kind of went with it. It's been, and I've seen everything about it, like all how popular it is. But yeah, I've never like sat and watched that movie. I apologize.
So it's fine. The basic plot of the movie is that these high school kids, if they don't pass this presentation that they have, if they don't get a passing grade on it, then they're going to be split up, and then they can't become Wild Stallions, which is the band in the future. They want to be in a band, right? It's the band in the future that George Carlin's character Rufus comes back in the time to tell them that if this doesn't happen, then their music that brings peace to the world in the future can never come about. And so he comes and brings them a phone booth time machine that they use to go back in time and meet with the people that are historical figures. And they end up accidentally bringing them back to the present and creating a presentation involving all the different people from the past, like Beethoven. And you get to see Beethoven playing on modern pianos, and Genghis Khan coming into a sporting store and seeing a baseball bat and running around with it. It's a great movie. Fantastic movie. Napoleon and stuff are in it. So that was my idea, is that like we have that. We're Bill and Ted. Instead of a phone booth that travels through time, it's like a controller that travels through game dimensions, and we get to pull in these people and come through. So since you don't know who Bill and Ted are, we'll go back to the origin of the question. So who's the hero? Who's the sidekick? By what you're saying, are you saying a host is hero, sidekick is?
Yes, exactly.
So you'd be the sidekick here.
Yes, I would be. Gotcha.
Okay, are we envisioning this as like you're an AI companion, but you're competent on your own, kind of like Atreus in 2018 God of War? Like, I don't have to I'm not having to escort you like Ashley. Like, you can just run around and do stuff on your own.
Yeah, I think what I would be is like,
or just like Army of Two and Kane and Lynch, where it's like co-op.
Yes. Yes.
Like the whole idea is that you play with two people, but if you don't have the other player at the time, you just choose which one you want to play as.
Exactly. No, that I'm into.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay, so we go forward. In this situation, in the story that we're kind of crafting, I don't know what powers, I think, is the wrong word. But for the sake of the question, she needs to know what powers we'll have. So I think the power here is more in the vein of like...
I got it.
It's a mechanic that we can use. Good.
So I was about to go the same direction. Because your power is speech, right? You can talk your way out of situations. All right. So that's your thing. You got like basic gun skills, but your thing is like, if I want to play it safe and I don't want to fight, you can talk your way out of situations. Mine is just, I can hold 2 of everything. Right. So I can like akimbo miniguns at the end game. Like that's the thing, right? I think we're a game akin to like a Resident Evil with like the humor and fourth wall breaking of a Max Payne. So I can, at the end of the game, right? You are having this conversation with the enemy, Velvet, who has led us into our final place. Right, I think this is where I'm going. I don't know if you have any disagreements on the audience.
On the villain?
Yeah.
See, on the villain, I was thinking Kuno guy because he's perfect because he came into the platinum competition saying he came in like 3 months late. His first month on the board, he's already beat me for second place, if I remember correctly. And whenever he joined, he said he wanted to join so he can come back and rise to the top, and this would be his anime villain origin story. So I think, if nothing else, even if he's a pawn of Velvet, he needs to be involved.
No, okay, here's the twist. Velvet is the pawn. So he leads us into the final area, which is the Velvet Corner.
It's the strip club.
It's a strip club. That's where the last thing is. And it's perfect because what he does is he has the power of sexy. So his boss reveal is him just like ripping off his shirts and like popping all the buttons and shit. It's like a button-up shirt. But then a gust of wind happens, blows us against the wall, right? Knocks you out. So I'm like kind of crawling because the sexy wind kind of hurt me. But what really helps us is when I wake you up, all of the tables are conveniently flipped on one side so we can use them as cover. See where I'm going with this? Thinking of the map layouts and everything.
Okay.
So then, I find a second minigun. So that's where I get my second minigun. But like tease throughout the game.
Since we're in the Velvet Corner, can, instead of it being a minigun, we're in the sexy place, right?
Yeah.
What strip club / sex shop item can we have you be akimboing right now? Like a penis pistol? You dual wield peepees?
I've got 2 of those dildos that you see that actually come, and that's my gun. So I'm just firing at Velvet with those, and you're like actually shooting at him. And it's great because when I hit like a critical hit, it blinds him for a minute. He's like, "Oh, you got it in my eye. I'm never going to recover." And what's really great is we defeat
and we're using the dancers, right? We use the dancers to be like the fluffer.
Dancers are all dead. Dancers all died by the sexy.
Oh yeah, that's true. The power of sexy is very strong.
Right. He opened his shirt. Power of sexy flew out.
Yeah, he opens his shirt and
exactly.
Velvet's Corner.
Exactly. So you get knocked out, and like the end of the cutscene is like him walking up to one of the strippers who's like dying, and she's looking at him. She goes, "Daddy, chill," and then he just steps on her, and it's over.
So where does Kuno guy come into here? Is he?
What's great.
Do we reveal him in the final credits, like post credit scene, where he's revealed to be the person behind? Like he's a shadowy figure, and then as the light, he leans forward, and you see the light come in. He's wearing like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure sunglasses, and someone's like, "Boss, Velvet's dead," and you just see his face lean forward, and you see the sunglasses. And he's like, "Nani?" Credits.
That wouldn't be bad. I was thinking he was more like a like from the original Resident Evil 4, like a Salazar, right?
Okay.
So Velvet would be the little mini guy. I can't think of his name right now. Ricardo, I think it is. So he walks up till he's like, Mr. Figueroa. And that's how like he talks to us, right? That's Velvet's voice in the game. So what happens is after we've defeated Velvet, you hear over the intercom that there's a something's happening in this building. So then we leave, but what's great is that's all happening in a cutscene. Cutscene ends on like a zoom in on Velvet's face as he's dying, and just his eyes are just fucking crusty and bloodshot, and like blood is now mixing with that fake whatever it is in there. So then we go into the next one, and we fight.
Please continue.
And we fight Kuno Guy. And what's really cool about Kuno Guy is his weapons, like he's got all the different attacks and shit, but like his first attack is like just hucking bronze trophies at us, right? Then he upgrades and he's like swinging a silver trophy and all this. So
this is like a platformer where there's like stages to the battle. It's like after you get to the first stage, he introduces new attacks into it, and like
it's like we shoot him. Yeah, I think it starts at like in like a clock tower. Right, so we shoot him, and then the floor falls, and he goes down, and then he rises up.
First of all, it's the building. It's the building away from. It's part of the Velvet's Corner area, so it's the cock tower, and it's a big clock that's on a big penis, and they call it Big Ben.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, it's Big Ben, and it's because it's a penis, but it's got like just a little bit of like the scimitar curve to it.
Funny because what I was about to say is the whole game we're trying to make it to this tower in the Velvet Corner thinking we're going after Velvet, and the whole thing is we're commenting that his building leans a little to the left.
Nice.
Yeah, so I think we end up beating Kuno Guy and then taking all his platinum trophies for ourselves. And then that's where the game ends. But then, here is the post-credits scene. You see,
I think I have one too. I'm curious.
You see someone, right? We only see their back, and it's like somebody walking up, right? And that's like TT Dog is walking up to this person. He's like, "Sir, they've defeated Kuno Guy, and they're coming for you." And then you just kind of like the camera starts to like swing around the person, and this big reveal of him just sitting at this desk with just TVs everywhere. And then there are like little people being controlled, like playing controllers and shit because he's farming platinum trophies. And then the camera raises up, and then we just hear Kevin Bacon Bits.
Yes, this is exactly where I was going. I was hoping. Kevin Bacon Bits is behind it all.
They had to survive, or I wouldn't know the next monthly game I need to platinum. And then it just cuts to black, and then that's the game.
And it turns out the whole plot is everybody working against each other to try and shoehorn themselves to the top of the trophy competition.
Exactly. But then the twist in the sequel is that we kill everyone, but because we've spent so much time killing them, like Yuna wins the fucking competition.
Comes out of fucking nowhere. It's like, wow, Yuna's actually been putting in some work lately. Actually,
you guys really slowed down.
It's gonna be fun. It's like someone who's not even in the competition has to win. I guess Shafe Dog wins. Okay, well there you are. This is now, of course, that's the end to where we are right now. But who knows what happens next? Maybe you can find out on next week's Velvet's Corner. All right, guys, that was a ridiculous episode.
Ending, first off, was it the same ending?
Oh, that was exactly. It was going to be that behind it all. It was Kevin Bacon Bits. That was 100% it.
Simpatico.
That was
perfect.
As soon as you said that, as soon as you were like, "Well, we pull Kuno Guy into the game," I'm like, that means that we have to reveal at the end of it all that Kevin Bacon Bits has actually been the master manipulator behind everything.
I like that we were simpatico on that.
Yeah. It just makes sense because he's still in first place right now.
Right.
And then we can make a sequel called Triangle Squared 2, The Fall of Kevin Bacon Bits.
Yes.
And it's like we pull even further into the Max Payne inspiration.
Mm-hmm. And then what we end up seeing is that Josh Ayers has been just kind of sitting in the background, like waiting for competition to fall.
Yeah.
And then
he's just
takes
sitting back
over.
There. The camera kind of just goes like the beginning of the game. You see Kevin Bacon Bits, and he's like, "I'm calling you in," and then the camera just points over, and you see like the Australian cowboy hat kind of tilted down, and you hear, "Oi, mate!"
You just, "Oi, mate! It's time to put some American shrimp on my barbie."
And he's like, in Australia, we're known for two things: big cocks and big crocs. And then it just bam, and that's the start of the game.
But we
set him up as the new villain.
We're taking inspiration from Metal Gear, right? So in the second game,
but Crocodile Dundee as well, just to throw that out there.
Yeah. So he pulls out like this really weird like fob, right? Like you're not sure if it's for a car or not. And then he presses it, but you don't really hear anything. And then it's like Kevin Bacon Bits just kind of like out of the side of his eye, just like, what the fuck you doing? Like, this is our big moment. This is the beginning of the game, you know? And then he hits it again. And then you just hear like that scene in Jurassic Park. You get a focus on like a glass of water, like the ripples and shit. And you just hear da-doom, da-doom, da-doom. And then Josh Ayers tips his cowboy hat to Kevin Bacon Bits. He says, "I'll be off, mate." And he jumps inside a pouch of a gigantic mechanical kangaroo and just jumps out of the bunker and then just comes right after us.
This is fucking stupid. Okay, listen, I need to sleep amongst other things. So, Chris, thank you for joining me. We'll see how this story continues to unfold on next week's Velvet Corner. But until then, you'll have to wait in anticipation. Guys, if you've listened for this long, first of all, thanks, I guess. I don't really know what else to say in that particular situation. But this has been Triangle Squared episode 302. Somehow we've made 302 of these shit shows. If you liked what you heard, consider liking and subscribing if you're watching on YouTube. Always feel free to talk to us in the comment section if you want to hit us up about what we're doing or your thoughts on what we're talking about. If you want to chime in on who you think will actually win the competition in this weird virtual world that we're talking about, you can also head over to the Twitter at TriangleSQRD. Follow us on there. If you're not feeling Twitter lately, you can find us on Facebook in that group, Triangle Squared, a PlayStation podcast. Or you can always click the link in the description below, whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on podcast services, and join that Discord. Talk to us day in, day out. Join a bunch of other listeners. Be part of the community's take. And that brings us to a very important question, Chris. What is the community's take this week?
I'm sorry.
Cough.
No, it would be if you could hand a blank check to anyone to make a game for Sony, what would it be? Make a game for anyone.
Fair point. If you could hand a blank check to a game developer,
yep.
Who would it be? What would the game? Well, yeah, not even what would the game be? Because if you're giving it to them, I'm sure you just trust that they know what the hell they're doing.
Exactly.
They'll make something cool. All right, guys, we will be back next week for episode 303. But without further ado, we'd like to shout out our patrons who went over to patreon.com/Nartech and gave as little as $1 per month. It's a huge help, supports the show, helps us be able to do all this without digging into our own pockets, which we are very appreciative of. So without further ado, we'd like to thank Spencer, Brandon Edwards, Alex, Barry Rogers, Stingray X, It's a Sin to Win, a.k.a. Sean, Aztec King, Lecheon69, The Lord Corgi, Salvador Garcia, Hammond Egger, Bailey Robertson, Mark Schutz, Cypher Primus, Kyle Grimm, Rude Days 93, Kevin Bacon Bits, Christopher, Danny Villalobos, Jehudi MD, No Fate, Josh Ayers, Derek Porter, Donovan Williams, Matthew Green, and Sean Sanderud. Thanks to each and every one of you. We'll be back next week.